Very good morning to you both.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good morning. I'm Mark Dolan, and this is Talk, the home of common sense. We've got a packed 4 hours for you. The fallout from the murder of prominent conservative US activist Charlie Kirk continues, with figures on the left in America, including school teachers, nurses and college professors, literally celebrating this innocent man's death, and as a result being fired from their jobs. What is the problem with the modern left and their reaction to what is clearly a human and political tragedy? So following this political assassination, is America now on the brink of a full-blown political civil war? Meanwhile, here in the UK, pressure grows on the student and incoming president of the Oxford Union, supposedly a platform for free and open debate, who openly delighted in the news of the shooting. This is a man who debated Charlie Kirk face-to-face. Should George Aberanaya be entitled to his free speech, however abhorrent, or should he lose his post as president of this venerated institution? And should he be chucked out of Oxford University altogether? That is the view of the former Prime Minister Liz Truss. But is this double standards from the free speech-loving right? After an almost entirely disastrous 14 months in power, the sharks are circling for the Prime Minister Keir Starmer, with his arch-rival, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, reportedly plotting a leadership bid. With the ignominious departure of several government figures, including, of course, Angela Rayner, and now UK Ambassador to the United States, Peter Mandelson, with an economy flatlining, illegal immigration through the roof, and an unhappy party on his backbenches, it now looks unlikely that Starmer will fight the next election as leader. So how long has he got? And speaking of Peter Mandelson, he may have been dogged by scandal his entire political career, but he was the most effective US ambassador in decades, charming the Trump White House and helping broker a favourable trade deal on better terms than the EU. So what now for the UK-US special relationship? Don't forget that Donald is coming to the UK, and we're going to bring you ringside action Donald in the UK, what a story and what a headache for Sir Keir Starmer at this moment in time. Now, speaking of headaches, the economy has officially ground to a halt with growth at 0% in July. Not great news for Rachel from Accounts and her £50 billion black hole. So is the Chancellor about to think the unthinkable, break a manifesto pledge and raise income tax, VAT or national insurance? Also this morning, should we scrap indefinite leave to remain for low-skilled workers coming to the UK? That's the view of a leading Conservative MP. We'll get reaction. And today sees several marches in the capital, the most prominent of which will be led by political activist Tommy Robinson. So who is this man? Who is Tommy Robinson? What are his motivations? Is he a fearless patriot, giving a voice to millions, or a dangerous thug that seeks only division? We'll hear from both sides. You see, I'm nothing if not balanced, partly thanks to the very balanced producer today. We've got Ted. We've got, I'm delighted to say, Dave pressing the buttons, Engineer Dave. Tech Op Dave, they call him, which I think is dismissive. He's more than that. We've got Davis making me look beautiful on YouTube, because don't forget, we are on the radio. We're online. We're on YouTube. This is a TV show. It's a radio show. We are everywhere. We're unstoppable. You can't keep a good man down. And the monologue is back at 8 a.m. this morning. I'll bring you the Dolan Dispatch. Why the murder of Charlie Kirk matters to Britain, and why the wickedness, intolerance and cruelty of the woke left has been exposed for all to see. That is the Dolan Dispatch at 8 o'clock. Don't miss it. And it is Saturday, so we're going to have some fun. I'm here to set you up for a cracking weekend, and your opinions are my priority. So give Tommy a call, because Tommy is answering the phones today. He's coming in hot, let me tell you. He's glowing, positively glowing. I'm not sure he's been to bed. He's a youngster. He's probably out last night. He's had a couple of espressos and he's ready to go. So give Tommy a call, book your place on the show, 0344 499 1000. Send me a text and let's talk. Well, folks, we have got a lot to get through, and I'm delighted to say for the first hour, I'm joined by the intellectual and moral colossus that is Stephen N. Allen. Hello, big man.
I can't believe you got it word perfect the way I texted it to you earlier. What a great intro, thank you.
Of course, yes, the check's in the post. Steve, great to see you. And the big story of the day, of course, is it continues to be the fallout from the shooting of Charlie Kirk. I guess, would you characterise yourself as a figure of the left politically?
Do you know, I don't even know anymore. I'm certainly often, where the places I work, I'm more of the left than everyone else I'm stood around.
Low bar.
Yeah, to be fair, but I don't know. I'm just willing to look at every issue individually, which actually often means you end up being the least popular person in a room. But I don't like siloed opinions, so I think the idea that, if you're the left, you have to believe all of these things. Yeah. If you're of the right, you have to believe all of these things. Come on, if you can do a Sudoku, you've got enough brain power to take it one issue at a time. Not that I can do a Sudoku, maybe I promise more than I can deliver there. But no, I'm often more of the left, but I think I know where your question's going. I'm not of the left that we've been seeing on Blue Sky. Well,
this is it, and this is my concern, is that I think that the old school lefties who used to be concerned about inequality and poverty have essentially lost their voice within the whole movement. And I feel that you've got what could only be described as the woke left or the radical left that have infiltrated the idea of being on the left politically, both in the UK and in America. So do you think this is a problem overall, the reaction to this man's murder, with people, as you say, on social media of the left celebrating the fact that a woman's been widowed and 2 children have been orphaned?
It's such hypocrisy, and I don't know what you could do to ever educate these people of that problem. The root cause of what we're looking at here is dehumanising other people. Oh, your opinion doesn't fit what I think, therefore you don't have the right to say it. You should be silenced. And these are the people who, everyone's been commenting, these are the people who have hashtag be kind in their bios, and then they're gleefully responding to someone's murder. Ridiculous. But the idea that you would not even engage with someone to argue, this is I'm old school. So I'm definitely old school. I might be old school left. Who knows what that is now? I'm politically homeless. I can be more easily convinced that maybe the government should be tweaking some things with the way our capitalism works. What I can't agree with is the way that this issue of identity is first and foremost. It's the most important thing. And if you don't agree with my views, I want you to not have a voice. Whether that be the old way of doing it, no platforming people, which I never agreed with when that started. If you want to win an argument, get out there, do the work. Do you know what I mean? Get involved in the argument, learn some facts, learn argumentative technique, get in there and beat someone in an argument, and then you've won the argument. But the left, certain parts of the left, would rather just have voice as silence. You can't say that. Oh, well then if it doesn't get said, then you never have to get the argument. But you don't win anything that way. You're simply just silencing voices. And I think what we saw with that horrible murder is just the extension of that theory. You say things I don't want to exist in the world, so you should be silenced. Normally it's by no platforming, by cancelling. In this case, it was by a bullet.
And why has this happened to the left? And this is not representative of the entirety of the left in America or in this country. 9.5 million people voted for Labour in July of last year, the vast majority of whom will be friends and neighbours of ours, about whom and with many issues we agree. So what's happened to some figures in the left that they would celebrate the murder of a 31-year-old man?
Do you know what? I think to hit on that point, to agree with you there, when you look at the kind of people that are required to vote someone into power, it's such a large group of people, such a broad church, that most of them will be sensible people. You can't tar everyone with the same brush. It's getting to the stage politically where actually the kind of people we're talking about wouldn't even be voting Labour anyway, because this purity politics, you end up budging yourself further and further to an extreme. They wouldn't touch Labour with a barge pole now because it's not pure enough. It's not enough of the left. But what happened to get them there? I mean, I do have a theory. It's a boring theory. But I think what happened, I've never gone into this with anyone. You see, we shouldn't even be allowed to get together.
Open up.
Get some,
it's 11 minutes past 6. Okay.
Tell me when we get to 7 o'clock and I've gone on too long. What happened was, in my theory, during the 80s and 90s, the right had too much political power because when the left was in charge, it wasn't really the left. If you think of Bill Clinton, you're thinking Tony Blair, there was a whiff of the right to all of it.
Definitely.
Because what happened is... sorry,
Tony Blair was a small C Conservative, really, wasn't he?
And the only reason New Labour was in was because the Tories had sorted themselves out a bit too much. You know what I mean? John Major wasn't going to get in again, so you needed something else, and what you ended up with was another copy of the Conservatives. So people of the left were thinking, well, we're not going to win anything here. And somehow they moved the battleground to reputational damage. So when social media came along, like another decade later, they were just better at it. For a long while, the left were excellent when it came to reputationally ruining someone on social media. So the right had the political power, but this other power happened, this cancellation, this telling people what they can and can't say. And they became so good at it that they stopped engaging in argument and just shut down voices they didn't like. And I think that was the start that's ended up where we are now with this idea that... I know people who've had a terrible take about this Charlie Kirk issue. I know people who've said things. I mean, maybe they're trying to be funny. I don't know. I think there is part of them that thinks people shouldn't be allowed to say things. They believe the narrative like, oh, he was spreading hate. Find the thing he said that was hate. And if you do, I'll agree with you. But seeing as all you're doing is getting this received wisdom of, oh, you say things of the right, therefore you're spreading hate, therefore should be silenced. Thoroughly disagree with it, but I think that's where it came from. I think it came from finding a different political power. And
there's a pathology at the heart of this, isn't there, if you cannot mourn the passing of somebody who was at university, you know, among probably predominantly a left-wing audience, seeking to have an open debate with a roadshow that was essentially entitled "Prove Me Wrong," or at least that was his catchphrase, wasn't it? "Prove me wrong." So this pathology of celebrating the death of someone, is that a worry?
It is, because it's non-humanising. And that's the problem. When as soon as you consider your enemy to not have the full status of human, then you don't have the empathy. I know you can find the quote of Charlie himself saying things about empathy. That doesn't mean that you don't get to have it. If you disagree with him, you then don't go to what you consider to be his level on empathy. The pathology of it comes from, I think it's this idea of seeing words to being equally as violent as violence.
Right.
And I'm too old to agree with that. I've looked at the dictionary. That's not what it is. But if you believe that, oh, if you say a thing and you spread words, that is effectively violence, then violence being done upon you is somehow the karma. I think people have that opinion. I don't know what you do to convince them. You can say, look, this is a father and a husband that's been shot, and they'll never want to connect. They'll never let that resonate with them, because no one likes proving themselves wrong. If you open your mind up to that, if you're one of these blue sky people saying hideous things, then you'll have to have that climb down. No one wants that emotional cost of realising they were wrong.
Next up, we've got some of tomorrow's front pages. And here's a question. With Liz Truss calling for the incoming president of the Oxford Union to be expelled from the university altogether, are the right guilty of double standards when it comes to free speech? That's next.
He is so quintessentially English, even though it's a bit of a performance. Mandelson is extremely well connected. He comes from a sort of political aristocracy, even though it's not aristocracy. And he knows a lot of very important people and can hold his own. And like I said, you know, people genuinely saw him, independent people, civil service people, when they worked with him, as a brilliant operative. The problem is he just comes with this baggage.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Mark from Lincolnshire has messaged the show. Good morning, Mark. Mark says the left has become an extremist religion. If you aren't with them, you are evil and need to be destroyed. Sean in Gloucester. Morning, Mark. It makes no difference how much Keith Stalin shuffles things around. We are no longer listening to his lies, and we don't like the pack. They just need to go before they do any more damage. That's Sean in Gloucester. And Ed in Salisbury. On Oxford University, the question is, should this guy be thrown out, this incoming president of the Oxford Union who celebrated the murder of Charlie Kirk, the conservative political commentator in America? Ed says that he shouldn't be thrown out of university because the difference is his speech is incitement to violence, where free speech is its limit and no longer permissible. Actually, I think what Ed there is saying that he should go because he incited violence. Let's have a look at tomorrow's front pages. The Sun newspaper, Davina to wed. 2 marriages, a brain op. Sorry, put my teeth back in. 2 marriages, a brain op, and never again. That's the TV star Davina McCall has revealed she is going to walk down the aisle a month after declaring she would never marry again. The Times newspaper, Mandelson, number 10 was told. Sir Keir Starmer defended Lord Mandelson in the Commons, although Downing Street and the Foreign Office were already aware of damning emails between him and the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. The Times has been told that the Foreign Office was sent details of the cache of emails earlier on Tuesday and passed them to number 10 2 days before Starmer decided to sack Mandelson as ambassador to the United States. Later in the show, we'll be speaking to an American political journalist. We'll be talking about what happens now for the UK-US special relationship. Daily Mail, My Prison Nightmare by Boris Becker, the most haunting account of going to jail you will ever read. And Charlie Kirk murder, suspected assassin turned in by his own father. Engraved Hey Fascist catch on bullet casing, now could be sentenced to face the firing squad. Donald Trump says killer deserves the death penalty. With me for the duration of the hour is the brilliant comedian and broadcaster Steve N. Allen. And Steve, on the Charlie Kirk story, Liz Truss has suggested that not only should the incoming president of the Oxford Union, who celebrated Kirk's murder, cease to be the president of the Oxford Union, he should be expelled from university. What say you?
Agree with the first bit, disagree with the second bit. Because this is a free speech issue. So actually, you're allowed to, in your WhatsApp group, say wrong things. Because you're not broken the law. But if your reputation is going to cause reputational damage to the union, then you don't get the... You should lose your job for causing damage to the place that you're working, because they think, oh, we don't want you as the representative figure for this union. That's absolutely fair. But if you started to get... I mean, my original point in the last section was a lot of this all started when universities tried to just get rid of people they don't like. I know it's normally in giving speeches, but... that's what we'd be doing here. We don't like this guy's opinion, so he shouldn't be allowed access to education. I know it's such a privilege to go to Oxford, I get that, but still, I don't like the idea of you've expressed an opinion that we think wrong, therefore we start to you ruin your freedoms. But he should lose. You shouldn't be the president of the Oxford Union, which is all about being a bastion of free speech, whilst you're mocking the death of someone who was literally famous for speaking freely to people he disagreed with.
Most definitely. Now, I've criticised the woke progressive left for their intolerance and, as we've discovered in the last 24 hours, their appetite for violence. But it's important to scrutinise the right as well, who can be mightily hypocritical.
Yeah.
Is Liz Truss, who is such a proponent of free speech, guilty of double standards by calling for this guy to be expelled from university altogether?
Definitely. And it's because there's two types of free speech, isn't there? There's the important one, which is people saying things you disagree with, and there's the flaming obvious one. Oh, well, this person should be free to say the thing I agree with. Well, it's not even worth having that discussion. Of course you think people should be free to agree with you. It's confirmation bias, isn't it? That people, when they're silent saying something you agree with, you want to take to the streets. But that difficult thing, that old quote of, you know, I fight to the death for your right to say something I disagree with. It doesn't happen much these days, does it? Because we're all about cancellation. We're all about no platforming. Both the right and the left. And I think the left started it, but the right have definitely caught a dose of it, haven't they? The idea that, oh, you're saying something I disagree with, well, they'd cancel you for it, so I want to cancel you for it. That's a race to the bottom.
The former Sky News presenter Adam Bolton went viral on X yesterday by saying, why are we making such a fuss of the Charlie Kirk murder? This is an American story and an American problem. What's your view on that? Why does this story matter to my viewers and listeners?
Do you know, if it's a shame he's not in the studio, I guess he's not available on the phone, I'd say to him, all right, it's an interesting take on it. Did you tweet the same thing during the Floyd issue, where Black Lives Matter? Were you there going, well, this is America? Why are we getting involved in Black Lives Matter protests? Send. Did he do that? Because if he didn't do that, I accuse him of hypocrisy too.
Well, that's right. Well, what he did is he actually used, then it was called Twitter. He was on Twitter after the George Floyd murder, and he advertised a show on Sky that was going to sort of profile George Floyd. So I think double standards is definitely appropriate there.
Why was he interested in that? It was an American story.
Well, but so the question is, why does it matter to my viewers and listeners, this story? Why does it matter to Britain?
I think we have a slightly different take on free speech than America. I get that. As a Venn diagram, we mainly overlap. There's a slight edge where we have slightly more laws that curtail what you can say in terms of slander and whatever. In America, slightly different issues. But in general, as a people, as a philosophy, free speech is important. And I think a lot of it, maybe it's an age thing. I think if you grew up in the 80s and 90s, free speech was the kind of thing, it was the received wisdom. Of course it's good, because look at the places that didn't have it. Look at the West Germany. Before the wall came down, the idea of freedom of speech was different. But then for younger generations, they never really saw the downside to not being freely able to speak. So then free speech became this, this code word for, oh, what are you trying to say? What do you want to say, you racist? Somehow they jump that. So yeah, I think it's important to us, because without free speech, you don't have a society. There are things that happen over here which we should pay attention to. The right to protest, things like that, slowly being curtailed. Where at some point we'll miss them. And you don't want to end up not having free speech when all of a sudden you want to start fighting over some issue and you're not allowed to protest, you're not allowed to say things online, then you'll regret it.
And isn't the reason, I'm going to come to Chris in Epsom in just a moment, but isn't the reason why the Charlie Kirk story matters in Britain is because extreme elements of the left here in the UK are just as intolerant and just as violent as those in the United States?
Possibly. I suppose I don't know as a fact that they are just as violent. They're definitely intolerant by what I see online. It was my fault for having a little nosedive into Blue Sky on that evening to say, I wonder what people
Can you tell us about Blue Sky for those that don't know what it is?
So it's basically a copy of what of original Twitter. When Twitter become an Elon X thing, Blue Sky was set up, and it's definitely not replaced it, but it's got more of a left-leaning vibe. And I was surprised because it spends a lot of time being really nice. But on that evening, on Wednesday evening, I was looking to see what the responses were. Twitter was full of people, X was full of people being appalled by this. I thought, I'll just have a quick look. And some of the comments, some of the glee with which people were taking to social media was appalling. You can have those thoughts, but have the good sense to keep them to yourself.
Chris is in Epsom. Top of the morning, Chris. Welcome to Talk.
Hi, Steve. Hi, Mark.
Lovely to have you on the show. What's your reaction to the fallout from Charlie Kirk's murder?
Well, I can't say on air what I'd like to say about the murder of Charlie Kirk. This chap, I'm with Steve. Well, you haven't said anything about it, but I'm with Steve. I was watching what was trending as well, and I was shocked, really shocked. But the Steve used the word gleeful. I would say joyful, a bit stronger than gleeful. The people celebrating his death. I mean, it was disgusting. And I'm a member of the Free Speech Union. I'm a fully paid up gold member, and I believe in free speech. I believe that President-elect has the right to say that. But we must understand, everybody must understand, free speech has consequences. Now, I don't think he should be expelled from the university. I think he should stay, get an education, and hopefully some humanity. But he should not be president of the most revered debating room, not just in the country, but probably in the world. That would be just entirely wrong.
Well, I agree with you, Chris, and I think that's going to be the prevailing view, and I doubt that he will maintain his position as the incoming president of the Oxford Union. But you think he should stay as a student. What's your reaction to Liz Truss calling for him to be expelled, Chris?
Well, she's never got anything wrong since she got voted in as Prime Minister, has she?
She doesn't have the best track record, does she?
No, I mean, she didn't understand what she was doing. She didn't understand that she had to take the media and the city along with her. She thought I'm the governor, I can say what I want, I can do what I want. And she learned, she lasted less than the cabbage, wouldn't it? Or lettuce, wouldn't it?
Definitely. Chris, where does this cruelty come from? Where does the intolerance come from some on the left? Where does the lack of empathy come from and the appetite for violence?
Well, Steve actually said something earlier that I absolutely agree. I'm 64.
You sound very sprightly for that, Chris.
Thank you. All of it is a worry. Well, but Steve got it. I think Steve pegged it. The Generation Z, all right, they did not see the Berlin Wall. They did not see what was going on in East Germany. I certainly did. I served and went over to the British Army over the Rhine, if you remember. They were the British... There was the barracks over there.
Yeah.
Now, I actually did a lot of exercises close to the IJLB, the Inner-German land border. And the closer you got to the border in West Germany, the more happy the people were to see you. And we used to plot up and do our exercises. And they used to bring us hot food, flask of black tea and a little bottle of rum. They were fabulous. So, you know, because obviously I was brought up, I was born 61. So I was brought up all about World War II. Taught that in school. You know, I had family that served. So I didn't like the Germans. And then I was over there in the VAR, and they were lovely people. My views changed entirely. And then the wall came down. And that's when I think Steve's got it right. The people didn't see... We had free speech and took it for granted after the wall came down. Before that, we revered free speech, and we looked at people that didn't have it.
Yeah.
And now the weird thing is that last year in Russia, 480 people were arrested and jailed for matters of free speech on social media platforms. In the UK, it was 3,800.
These are dark times, aren't they? Chris, thank you for your call. Do call me again soon, 03444991000. This is a voice note from Anna in Surrey. Take it away, Anna.
Morning, Mark. Anna, Surrey. Absolutely love your show.
Oh,
when you come from a position of weakness, you do have to spout hate and vitriol. Look at Keir Starmer. One of the very first things he did getting into government was to put my fellow citizens into jail for their tweets and their opinions. And no, this young man should be allowed to say whatever he wants, this young student leader. Of course, he must have free speech, and I don't believe in boundaries with free speech. However, any position of responsibility where he could influence, or intimidate, or cause harm to any other student, he should be actually displaced from. Absolutely, he should lose his role. He's not a leader. He's sad. Cheers, love.
Oh, well, listen, what a brilliant voice note. Anna in Surrey, thank you for that. I agree with every word. What about this student at Oxford University? I think it's widely agreed that he's not going to be able to remain as president of the Oxford Union, which is about debating ideas and tolerating another view. But should his academic career be the price he pays for his remarks? And is it a compromise that this guy is being dragged over hot coals for a private message on WhatsApp? Is that a mitigating factor when we consider that case? Lots of that to come, plus tomorrow's front pages. More of your messages as well. Book your place on the show, 03444991000. Tommy is ready to take your calls, and we'll do that straight after this short intermission.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thing we did.
Right. Folks, welcome back. Listen, I'm having far too good a conversation with Steve N. Allen, who is the brilliant comedian broadcaster who's with me in the studio for the next 30 minutes. And we've got more front pages for you. The Guardian. Time is running out, MPs warn Starmer. Keir Starmer has been warned that time is running out to repair his faltering premiership, with Labour MPs beginning to ask whether he could be challenged as Prime Minister after a disastrous few days in which Angela Rayner resigned and Peter Mandelson was sacked as ambassador to Washington. A series of MPs said a challenge was likely if local elections went badly next May. Well, we'll be discussing this later in the show because one of Keir Starmer's most high-profile and effective rivals is the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham. And it does look like Burnham is considering a leadership bid. I'll bring you more on that shortly. How long has Starmer got? Daily Express, Kemi, crisis hit PM, failing to tackle growing challenges. Keir Starmer's government of scandal and crisis is incapable of leading Britain. That's according to the leader of the opposition. Steve N. Allen, is Keir Starmer in serious trouble?
Yeah. I mean, phase 2 is going well, isn't it? Wow.
The reboot.
Yeah, the reboot. Oh, I mean, there's been nothing but bad. Have they done anything since just, other than saying, we're starting phase 2 and it's going to be about fairness? And Angela Rayner, OK, well, let's do a reshuffle so that no one needs to pay attention to, Mandelson. So there's no more reshuffles to do to try and do the, look over there thing. Yeah. This is not looking good, is it? This is, it's popcorn time. Because I think also as a nation we're so used to seeing prime ministers like self-immolate because of what happened with the Tories at the end. They were getting through leaders, and it was simply by you get enough momentum behind the failure of a prime minister, the news doesn't let it drop, and then eventually they go. We're heading in that direction. It's just a trickier situation because there's no one to replace him. So I think he'll be forced to continue to be embattled for a while until people have been moved into the right place.
Is Sir Keir Starmer paying the price of a Tory legacy of failure? Because they've only been in for a year and a government can't move the dial that quickly, can they?
Well, I think other than maybe you could have a good discussion about the economic situation, which obviously economies turn slowly. They're trying to turn a ship round at sea. Some of it will very much still be an issue to do with the Tories. But they've had over a year now, and a lot of the things that they're in trouble for aren't legacy of Tory issues. Yes, of course, we talk about migration loads, and that's another thing that you can look to the 14 years of Tories. But that's not the thing that's ending, not that it's ended yet, but it's not causing the potential end of this prime ministership, is it? All the stuff that's happening is about stuff they've done. The Tories didn't decide to go with Peter Mandelson for the job in America. How could Starmer have known that there might be some controversy with Peter Mandelson? Did you not look at the news during the two endings of his career? Same with Angela Rayner. That's not the Tories' fault, is it? It's hypocrisy. And if any, there are two things that can end a political party or a leadership. It's hypocrisy, which of course we should hate as a people. You see someone we've given you power by voting for you, and you use that to do something we don't like, and you've spent your entire career saying, pay your taxes, and it turns out you didn't pay enough tax. Of course we hate that. And then the other thing we hate is schisms in parties. The problem is all parties seem to be having that at the moment. Even Reform UK managed to lose 20% of their MPs when one person left. But still, it shows that even 5 people is enough to get political schisms these days.
Yes, and of course, in terms of Labour's, policies that have backfired, the Chagos Islands sell-off is another big headache for Keir Starmer. The economy flatlining and illegal immigration increasing on Starmer's watch, which puts pay to the idea that he's going to smash the gangs.
Yeah, or imagine how bad it could have been if he hadn't have smashed the gangs. That's how I'd reframe it and see if anyone goes along with that. No, you're right. There doesn't seem to be any wins. If you had a mixture of political scandal and loads of wins, then it might be a different situation.
Which Boris had for a while, didn't he? Because Boris, was with the Partygate stuff, but then he's the guy that got Brexit done.
Yeah. And the economy looked on one metric, if you compare it as a percentage how it's increasing because it had dipped so low during COVID, then you can make the math look like we had the best in Europe. That's going to look good, so you can get away with some scandals, but there's nothing in the win column.
No, most definitely. And therefore, those Labour backbenchers, there's no love lost for Keir Starmer within the Labour Party movement at the best of times.
Yeah, that's true. And look, they must be reading the room, looking at all the polls, the newspapers, and thinking, OK, well, we got in this time, but we're probably not going to do next time, and I'm a low-level backbencher. Why just have the one term of this and not do something? So, of course, the backbencher are going to be more willing to challenge the leadership, which often, I suppose, you wouldn't have. You didn't get when Boris had his 80-seat majority. I think that it's a rickety structure, and that's what we're seeing now.
It is. On the economy, Rachel Reeves is being advised by some in today's papers to have another look at her manifesto promise of not raising either income tax, VAT or national insurance. What do you think? Because you're an empirical chap, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah.
And the issue we've got is that there is a black hole, depending on who you ask, is between 30 and 50 billion pounds. The news yesterday that the economy is at 0% growth for July will tell you that Rachel Reeves either has to raise taxes or cut spending.
Yeah.
Her party won't let her cut spending.
Yeah.
And therefore it's taxes, but she's running out of options. She's running out of road, isn't she?
Yeah, there's borrowing as well, if you want to cause a different problem slightly further down the path. Well, they're your three options. I have more sympathy for Rachel Reeves than most people I work with because of this, right? Taxing is never good for the economy, because taxing is only half of what happens. There's tax and spend. And spend might be good for the economy, it might not, but taxing's always bad, because it's going to slow down whatever you do. If you tax items, people buy fewer of them. If you tax people working, it might impact how much they work. And I think she wanted to do some taxing and some spending, but every time she taxed more, the economy changed, just drink it all straight away. So there's no ability to do more spending. So I've got the sympathy for her there, that already she's managed to take more from us, and there's no upside to it. So now part of me says, do you know what, can we just rejig it all and be honest? Because instead of raising the promise, not raising taxes on working people, specifically worded so that you could get away with national insurance from the employer's side, well, we're still getting to, it's still impacting our economy, isn't it? And I feel slightly more scammed by a system that goes, oh, we won't tax these things, and then just getting the same amount of money taken from us by indirect methods. I almost want a political party that's willing to say, this is how much you'll pay on just national income tax. Let's just have one tax so you can see, oh, this is what they're taking from me, instead of all of the stealth taxes. I think part of this economy is run on people going into box junctions before they turn left. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's pretty much our main industry now.
Yeah.
Is it conceivable that she could break that manifesto promise and raise income tax or VAT or national insurance? Because that would certainly be, from her point of view, a silver bullet to tackle the enormous gap in her available funds. But is it politically possible?
Oh, it could be political suicide, and if you get rid of the Chancellor by a decision, then you pretty much, normally a couple of weeks later, you get rid of the Prime Minister, or a couple of months later. So yeah, I don't think they'd get away with it, because they made so much noise about it being a manifesto promise. Because if they hadn't mentioned it being a manifesto promise, they could have popped it in the manifesto and then changed it. I think the last time they tried to make it possible to increase taxes is when they tried to reframe everything to do with we need to do more spending on defence. That was their only chance to try and scare us, to say, look, there's a war just down the road there, we might need to tax more. And that story's gone away. So I think they've missed their opportunity.
Sean has messaged the programme. Good morning, Sean. Morning, Mark. Like anything else, free speech has limits. There is a point you cannot go beyond. How about some simple manners and respect, which seems to have been forgotten by the ever-increasingly hysterically loony lefties? Now their fantasy world is falling apart. We need an election now. Ian says, hi, the Labour Party is no longer left. And his second point, the real left would not welcome someone who celebrated the death of Charlie as much as they have refuted his views. Well, that, let me tell you, Ian, is the topic of the Dolan Dispatch at 8 o'clock. And I'll be talking about why the murder of Charlie Kirk matters to you and I here in the UK, and what it reveals about the modern left. More front pages next.
relationship, about them staying in the flats. The recent revelations that we've heard this week are unacceptable, and when you've got party loyalists coming out and defending the indefensible, I think is unacceptable.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Boris Johnson writing in today's Mail newspaper, our country has a nightmare government run by a blinking human bollard, and reasonable, decent people are thinking we can't take it much longer. But my question, Steve Van Allen, is how do you fix that, given the fact that Labour have a stonking majority? The parliamentary arithmetic means that we are stuck with this government for the next 4 years, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, and part of the blame for that goes to the Tories. It's all very well Boris saying that. I mean, obviously he's more of a columnist than a politician these days, but he has a role to play in what happened.
100%.
The reason Labour are unshakable at the moment is because they won the election, but it's more that the Tories lost the election, isn't it? It's more that people were sick of where we were. There's been a sweep of anti-incumbency in recent elections. That whole 2024, tons of 20-something elections across the globe, weren't they?
Yeah.
Most of them went to the non-incumbent because when life's hard, you rightfully blame the people in charge.
You most definitely do. I mean, I've got so many viewers and listeners who are tearing their hair out. How is Britain going to survive the next 4 years? Is that hysteria, or do they have a point?
I mean, we definitely will survive. I'm sure as a nation we've been through worse. I don't have full details of medieval times, but we seem to suck it up, don't we? I don't think it'll be nice. I wasn't here for the rougher part of the 70s, or maybe I was being conceived during some of it. Maybe that's what we'll do, conceive more. That's a terrible idea. Yeah, I don't know how you solve it. That's the problem, isn't it? It can't be just raising taxes, because we were already at the highest tax burden since the Second World War, and then the idea, it's just been worse ever since then. And then at some point it slows the economy down even worse. We end up very much being the sick man of Europe again. So I don't know what the solution is. Fortunately, I don't need to know what the solution is, because I never stood for office.
Does Andy Burnham have the solution? Because he is the mayor of Greater Manchester, who's one of the few Labour politicians who has positive approval ratings of +9 points, which Keir Starmer can only dream of. Would a change in leadership allow this government to recalibrate and start delivering for the British people?
Possibly. You'd have to suck it and see. It's very difficult to know, isn't it? He's spoken, I'm reading some of his ideas there about wealth tax. Hopefully that's just a noise, because it's undoable. You can't do it. It's a great theory. It's impossible to enact a wealth tax, because people with wealth move wealth around because they can pay people to move their wealth. So it's a paradox. You can never do it. But I understand why he makes the noise, because he's got to appeal to the left of the broad church of the people who vote for Labour. Some of the other things, trying to renationalise the odd utility, I think we're starting to be in favour of.
Yeah.
Certainly, I think we've had enough poo in our water to start to realise privatisation isn't in general perfectly good. With phones, it made so much sense. Back in the day when you had to wait 3 months to get someone to come round and install another phone line in your house, and it was the post office, wasn't it? What a ridiculous system. Of course, privatising phones, brilliant. Privatising that one fluid we all need to live, ridiculous. So I think maybe they could position themselves to do that kind of work, and the nation might like it.
Well, that's right. The three ideas are a wealth tax, nationalising the utilities, which, by the way, will cost tens of billions that sadly we don't have. So I wonder whether that's a bit of a pipe dream. And then the third suggestion was to scrap the 2-child benefit cap. Well, that makes Andy Burnham sound even more left-wing than Keir Starmer, with a lot of policies that are provably unaffordable.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. I think some of it might just be noise, because the idea of a wealth tax, I don't know how you could even try to do it, but I understand how you have to.
Is it surprising that there's a potential rival to Starmer is making noises further to the left, given the fact that probably the solutions that this country now needs are inevitably going to be more to the right, which will be cutting taxes to grow the economy and cutting spending.
I don't know if that's what they'll do next. I think the two issues that are the seam between the right and left are about the economic one, about tax, and it's also about migration. And I think no one can out-reform reform, so there's no point trying to just make right-wing sounding noises. What you need to do is solve the problem. I think if you were trying to basically trying to out-Farage by who can do the loudest kind of, I think this was terrible. Well, Starmer's never going to win that one. Farage knows how to play that game. But if you can actually stop the small boats and actually fix issues to do with migration, the problem goes away. So I think the buffer between right and left, you actually have to fix the problems. To win over the left-wing people, you just have to make the noises.
Margaret Thatcher was famously very unpopular between elections. And yet when it came to election time, based upon winning certain wars like the Falklands and also economic success, she managed to somehow have the right components to each time win a landslide. Does Starmer have any of that potential? Is there any hope that this guy can somehow reboot himself and become a great Prime Minister? Has he got it, or is he a dud?
I think he's a dud. It's not all his fault. I think having a good economy, people will basically put up with a lot of stuff they don't like if you feel that your everyday life is good. And we don't feel that right now, do we? I'm worried every single time there's a news story about energy prices going up. I'm not rich enough to be able to afford to put lights on now. How did that happen? I thought I was doing well in my career, but now I've got to go around like my dad did, turning everything off. It's ridiculous. And a part of that, I think, is terrible. That's another way that we are stealth taxed, because the government gets a slice of the money from our energy bills, of course. Yeah. So we've got the most expensive energy bills in Europe. So if we suddenly halved our energy prices, they'd be getting half of their take, so they'd have to put that on income tax as well. We are being fleeced in too many directions. So whenever we feel that, there's no sympathy, no ground to be given to a leader.
No, definitely. But of course, the most egregious tax that affects all of us is inflation, which is another concomitant of Labour's policies. Certainly with the pay settlements with the public sector, means that we've got more inflation, which reduces the value of your money and taxes all of us. This from Phil in Basingstoke. Good morning, Mark, says Phil. In my experience, those who lean to the left in politics are less politically aware than their lean to the right counterparts, particularly those in colleges and universities who blindly follow their peers and align themselves to what is currently trending. When challenged on their views, the lefties lash out as they don't have the knowledge of the subject emblazoned on the placard that they are brandishing. It's slogan politics and that ignorance gets people killed. Great show, says Phil. You are the only truth in the UK at present, Phil. We do try our best. Bill says, Boris Johnson did not get Brexit done. He failed. Well, Bill, you're absolutely right that he failed to exploit the many advantages that Brexit presents to this country. Just going back to that issue around the left in this country and across the West, Steve, what about this principle, this idea that those on the left won't engage in ideas, that it's tribal, and that leftism has become akin to a cult or a religion?
I think it's not true of everyone on the left. I'd hope that to be the case, and I also think social media will amplify the louder people. I think they call it selection bias or availability bias, one of those. So if you're looking on social media and therefore what's reported in media, you'll see the louder, more crying on TikTok types, and I don't think everyone's like that. But I think it stems from this belief. You know, the never kissed a Tory hashtag? The idea that you're so pure of politics that you don't even talk to people of the right. Well, what are you doing? This is what I don't understand. Firstly, if you want to win people over, you have to have conversations. This is what happened with Brexit. People of the left were thinking, well, I don't know anyone who's going to vote Brexit, and I refuse to talk to anyone who's going to vote Brexit. How did we lose? Well, it's because you refused to talk to the one people who mathematically you could have convinced to vote your way. It's ridiculous. And that's carried on ever since, this purity politics of I won't even allow a different view in my life. And then you don't understand why we're getting more problems rather than fewer problems.
Does Britain have an equivalent to the late Charlie Kirk, and do we need one?
I think our system's different, isn't it? Because our biggest fear is not people who disagree with you with guns. It's more a knock on the door and 6 police saying your books are a bit Brexity. So which is either worse or better. I'm not sure. I've been thinking of this over the last few days. It's less scary on some level, but that you don't have deranged people with guns in the same way. it's more scary that it's an arm of the state that's turning up and doing the silencing for us. I don't know, maybe it is more terrifying. It just seems that this week it seems not the right take on it, but I don't know, getting the police at your door is worse, I think, on some level. The idea that you can go to prison for a tweet. Yeah, so I think there is... That's where we're up at the moment. I think until you are willing to talk to other people, then it's not going to happen. I don't know who would make the rest of us Brits talk to other people. We're not as crazy as some of the Americans, but it's there.
Does this fallout from the murder of Charlie Kirk demonstrate that there is a pathology at the heart of the political left now in the West, and that actually what the left needs to do is sort of self-reflect and then fight for its own soul?
Yeah.
And to actually reclaim progressive politics and progressive ideology and take it away from the crazy people who think there are 100 genders and that a 5-year-old at school has white privilege.
Yeah, and it's almost not even that, is it? It's like you can have your wrong view if you want, but it's the fact that you don't allow people to have a different view. That's the more toxic
And that
thing.
some of these radical ideas have entered the political mainstream of the left, perhaps, which is a big turn-off for lots of ordinary people who previously would have voted Labour. Because isn't that why Donald Trump won in November of last year?
Yeah,
the left went a little crazy in America.
Yeah. Well, Bill Maher, I know we're both big fans of Bill Maher's work. Exactly.
A US comedian who's on the left but calls out the madness of the left.
Yeah, and so I think exactly his take is right. The crazy part of that, and I'm sure it's there on both sides. I'm sure if this were in some way politically reversed, there would be some right-wing people online also saying some tasteless things about the death of someone. But what we're looking at right now is the left-wing version of it. Yeah, I think that crazy side of it needs to be held to account, because there's tons of us who would be willing to rejoin and go, actually, no, we could sit and have a lovely discussion about how you do need government to curtail some of the excesses of capitalism, which is a bit of a lefty thing. I reckon I could get you to say some parts of socialism's all right. I'm sure you're in...
Well, let's put it this way. The fire brigade is a socialist idea, isn't it?
Looking after our veterans. Socialist. Because loads of people like
state schools is essentially a socialist idea.
Yeah, so it's entirely possible to have a sensible discussion in the middle. No one wants it anymore. People want the shouting from either end. I refuse to talk to you. I'm so appalled that you have this view. Get back in the middle with actual life where countries can be made better.
Most definitely. I completely agree with you, Stephen. And look, this is a conversation that's going to go on. It's very fractious. People are very angry at the moment and we're very divided. We need to come together as a community, do we not? We need to become one nation, and we're allowed to disagree with each other like a happy family.
Yeah, and yes, actually exactly like a happy family, because in most families there'll be some relative who very much has some views that you disagree with. But the point is, you still...
Are you talking about your famously racist auntie?
My famously racist
Auntie Joan. I just think she says what most people think.
Yeah, you do, and that's the worry. And yet I still get on well with you.
I like her truth bombs after a couple of sherries. Listen, let me tell you, Stephen, it's been a thrill to see you. You're a very old friend of mine. I'm delighted to have you back in the studio. Steve N. Allen is a broadcaster and comedian who can be found on social media. A very, very entertaining and clever man. Folks, lots more to come. Keir Starmer on the brink. The Sharks are circling. Is he under pressure? Well, Andy Burnham in Greater Manchester looks like he wants the top job. We'll discuss the future of our Prime Minister and this government next.
very good morning to you, by the way. Morning, Glory, with me, Mark Dolan.
Just some breaking news for you coming out of Liverpool Crown Court.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the programme. Welcome to the home of common sense.
Loads to talk about, I promise you that. Loads and loads and loads.
Yes, it's me again, your genial host, Kevin O'Sullivan.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good morning. I'm Mark Dolan, and this is Talk, the home of common sense. We have a packed 3 hours for you. The fallout from the murder of prominent conservative US activist Charlie Kirk continues, with figures on the left in America, including school teachers, nurses, and college professors, literally celebrating this innocent man's death. As a result of being exposed, many of them have now been fired by their employers. So, following this political assassination, is America now on the brink of a full-blown political civil war? Meanwhile, here in the UK, pressure grows on the student and incoming president of the Oxford Union, supposedly a platform for free and open debate, who delighted in the news of the shooting. This is a man who debated Charlie Kirk face-to-face and now celebrates his murder. Should George Abernaia be entitled to his free speech, however abhorrent, or should he lose his post as president of the Oxford Union? And here's a question for you. Should he be expelled from the university altogether? That is the view of former Prime Minister Liz Truss. Starmer on the brink after an almost entirely disastrous 14 months in power. The Sharks are circling for the PM, with his arch rival, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, reportedly plotting a leadership bid. With the ignominious departure of several government figures, including Angela Rayner, of course, and now US Ambassador to the US, Peter Mandelson, with an economy flatlining, illegal immigration through the roof, and an unhappy party on his backbenches, how long has Starmer got? The economy has now officially ground to a halt, with growth at 0% in July. Not great news for Rachel from accounts and her £50 billion black hole. So is the Chancellor about to think the unthinkable and break a manifesto pledge by raising either income tax, VAT or national insurance? And today sees several marches in the capital, the most prominent of which will be led by political activist Tommy Robinson. So who is Tommy Robinson? What are his motivations? Is he a fearless patriot giving a voice to millions, or a dangerous thug that seeks only division? We hear both sides on that one. And at 8 a.m, the monologue is back. I'll bring you the Dolan Dispatch. Why the murder of Charlie Kirk matters to Britain, and why the wickedness, intolerance and cruelty of the woke left has been exposed for all to see. Book your place on the show. Tommy is taking your calls right now. 0344 499 1000. Should this student be expelled from Oxford University? Get your opinions over. What you think is my priority. A big 3 hours to come. This is Talk. And I'm delighted to say, navigating the big stories of the day, with me in the studio is the brilliant comedian Steve N. Allen. I'll come to Steve in just a moment, but let's have a look at the Daily Express front page. Kemi, crisis hit PM, failing to tackle growing challenges. Keir Starmer's government of scandal and crisis is incapable of leading Britain, according to the leader of the opposition. Well, let's get reaction from a former Conservative MP, Bob Seeley, who joins me. Bob, welcome to Talk. Top of the morning to you, sir.
And you, thank you.
I'm sure you wish you were in the House of Commons and able to participate in your opposition to this government, who seem to limp from one disaster to another.
Look, it's genuinely remarkable how badly they're doing. And I think clearly it's a massive shame for our country that we've got a government which is, it's not... The Mandelson stuff is dreadful. The Rachel Reeves stuff is, or the Angela Rayner stuff is dreadful. But what's, for me, the worst story of last week was the big announcement that you had a company pulling out of £1 billion investment into Britain because it just doesn't think we're economically competitive anymore. So on one side you've got scandal, and the other side you've got this government intent on doing long-term economic damage to us by scaring away the investment that we need.
Do you feel culpable for the economic crisis that we now face, given that we're just a year into this new administration and it was the Conservatives who were in charge of the economy for 14?
Do you want to point to a specific thing? Or
I would say the deficit, which obviously is day-to-day spending, more goes out than comes in, the national debt, and the overall health of the economy, predominantly the debt as a legacy of COVID, etc.
Well, you've said it yourself, Mark. It's a legacy of, look, there are two. The British people had their say on the last Conservative government, and it was a blunt opinion. Let's put it very clearly. But you said it yourself. There were reasons for that. One of which was the massive COVID deficit. One of which was the massive amount of spending linked to the Ukraine war. Not supplying arms to Ukraine, but actually the huge hike in the energy price, which meant that people would have suffered. So the last Conservative government, for sure, spent a lot of money that it didn't think it was going to have to be spending because of those two very major international crises, or those sort of black swan moments that took place. And to be fair to Jeremy Hunt, he actually was getting things back on track when we lost the election. Rachel Reeves came in, spent lots of money, lots of cash on her union mates, has proved singularly inept in managing the economy, and actually we're now going backwards. So we were on the path to slow growth. Now, we need more than slow growth. I completely give you that. But we've now gone completely the other way. And in July, we had zero growth, haven't we? Like for most of this year.
Indeed. And inflation was at 2% at the time of the last election, at the tail end of the Conservative administration. It's now almost double that. Unemployment is up, investment is down. And we do face major structural problems. Keir Starmer is clearly feeling the heat, Bob, but it's no credit to the leader of the Conservatives, Kemi Badenoch, who's failed to really land a finger on him, hasn't she?
Well, look, let's see, it's early days. I'm not going to sort of... I think the important thing here, and looking at the important thing to understand here, is the damage that the government is doing to us at the moment. I mean, I was one of the few people who did actually speak out about Peter Mandelson before he actually became, when he was becoming the ambassador, and it was very clear that this was a really, really bad idea for Britain. Whether the Conservatives are getting back in the game at the moment, I don't think is quite relevant, because we've got potentially another 4 years of this government, and I do think we need to get our understanding of what they're doing wrong, so that we can actually start to put things right. Who's ever in power, whether it's Conservatives, whether it's Reform, whoever takes over, we're going to have a massive change in direction, and I hope for me this is the last Labour government of our lifetime, because it's certainly an absolutely useless one. People
are not happy with this current government, Bob, understandably so, based on their record in office, but they're not looking to the Conservatives for answers. Does it worry you that the Conservative Party appears to be drifting into obscurity?
Well, look, I mean, it's early days. Let's see what's going to happen. We're a year into a new government, and we've got another 4 years to go until the election. Probably, actually, another 3 years to go until the election. And we'll just have to see where we are in that time.
Is that not a degree of denial on your part when you say it's early days? You could already argue that Reform have replaced the Conservatives as the party of the right, and that's not going to change anytime soon.
Well, I don't know what's going to happen, mate. I really don't. So we'll have to see what's going to happen.
I mean, would you advocate a drastic manoeuvre on the part of the leader of the opposition in order to start making headlines and to, you know, get some control over the whole project? Because it's all about Nigel Farage and Reform UK at the moment, isn't it?
Look, for me, the important thing is that we get a government that replaces this dreadful Labour government and actually gets that country going in the right direction, because I'm a patriot. You know, I hope the Conservatives get their act together.
Indeed. If they don't, would you look elsewhere for your support?
I'm not going to talk about my opinions right now, Mark, because I don't know what's going to happen. I'm just the thing I'm focusing on personally is building a business and talking about my book about Russian warfare. I'm not, to be honest. What happens internally with Ukraine, with British politics right now, I really hope Kemi can lead the party and lead it successfully into the next election. I think she's a highly competent person. She's also a friend, so I'm really wishing her well in what she wants to do. But I mean, right now, I just, for me, the internal political battle of Reform versus Conservatives comes second to actually the damage that this Labour government is doing to the country. I really hope Kemi can lead the party, and I hope she continues to do so.
What's your prognosis?
I hope to make progress.
No, I hear you, Bob. What's your prognosis on Britain for the next 3 years, if you think there's likely going to be an election in 2028? Lots of viewers and listeners are wondering, you know, whether we can survive any more years of this Labour government. Where do you think we could be at the next election?
That's a really good question. You're right. I don't know if actually we are going to survive another 3 years. But the problem is then in what circumstances can you foresee an election? Would a chunk of the Labour Party vote for electoral suicide by voting in a confidence motion against the government? Can we see that in maybe in 2-3 years' time? It's difficult to imagine. It is genuinely difficult to imagine that they would do that. On the other hand, things are getting so bad, can you see the Labour Party sort of splitting in office? It's very unlikely, because they've got a stonking majority, and they will continue to have a stonking majority, even if 5 or 10 of them go off and join sort of Jezbollah or whatever Corbyn's new party is going to be called. How long can a party limp on in government? It's difficult to say. We will probably see another 3 years of this government, and they will decide to go a year early, presumably, because they'll be so scared of clinging on and going the full term. It's impossible to tell. But you're right, it's difficult to see. It's difficult to see how much worse this government is going to do. My assumption now is probably that Keir Starmer is going to be removed at some point next year, at which point you have Labour 2.0 trying to get its act together, trying to undo a lot of the harm that it's done in the last last year.
That's very interesting that you think that Starmer may go next year. Certainly if the May elections don't play out well, then it could be likely. Can I ask you your reaction to the appalling murder of the US Conservative political activist Charlie Kirk and the reaction to his passing that we've seen in some circles?
Yeah, I mean, this is the problem. Obviously, I'm so sorry to hear of Charlie's death, and sympathy, condolences to his friends and family. But this is a problem sadly, with politics at the moment, but increasingly with politics, it is becoming deeply, deeply intolerant. And when you have people who believe themselves to be morally superior to their opponents, and therefore their opponents are morally inferior, then it is a relatively short series of steps to try to demonize your opponents, be it chasing them out of jobs in this country because of their opposition to extreme trans politics, or the obsession and silencing of conservatives because of the obsession with race and gender politics, or in places like the United States, where you simply think that your opponents don't deserve to live because of their views. So we're living in an increasingly intolerant society, and frankly, it should worry all of us, because although the murder took place in the United States, what we're seeing in this country, and what we've seen for basically a decade now, and sadly it happened under the last Conservatives, was the sort of creeping extremism that's coming into the media, that's coming into the civil service and coming into the law, which seeks to silence opponents. We don't do it using physical force in this country. Well, you can talk about some police arrests for tweets, but we've generally done it through sort of denying people work or denying people's opinions in public, and it's a really destructive, creeping trend.
Do you agree with your former boss, Liz Truss, ex-Conservative Prime Minister, who has said that the person celebrating this chap's murder, the incoming president of the Oxford Union, should not only lose his role within the free speech debating union, but also he should be expelled from Oxford University?
I don't know if I'd expel him. I think he sounds pretty unpleasant, and I think he's got some pretty foolish and pretty extreme views. But I mean, that's just a perfect example of the way that people seek to demonise those or enjoy the murder of others whose opinions they disagree with. I think he should apologise and maybe learn a lesson, and maybe those people who support him and who think that who think somehow that it was right that he was celebrating somebody's death because of their political opinions, maybe they need to grow up and actually realise that if you want to live in a democracy, it means even if you disagree with other people, it means maybe that you respect them at the same time.
Bob, before I let you go, tell me about the book, because it's won plaudits. It was published in July, and this is your new book. It's The New Total War: From Child Abduction to Cyber Attacks and Drones to Disinformation, Russia's Conflict with Ukraine and the West. First of all, tell me about why you wrote that book.
I wrote that book. Thank you for mentioning it, Mark. I wrote the book because we don't understand what's happening in warfare in the Western world, especially in Britain. We're faced by a very dangerous enemy in the Russian state, which has started a very major war in Europe. But more than that, it's about how it's using all the tools in its disposal, be it politics, information warfare, economics, espionage, spying, paramilitary and military force, not only to destroy Ukraine, but also to, Putin has made no secret of the fact that he wants to destroy the power of NATO. And we need to understand this form of warfare that he's using against Ukraine, but also that he believes that he's in conflict with us in the West and the UK specifically. And we need to understand also that this is a template for war this century. And so we need to understand the type of war that's going to be fought against us, not only by, or the type of conflict that's going to be waged against us, not only by Russia, but potentially by other authoritarian states.
Vladimir Putin doesn't appear to want peace, does he?
No, that's very well put. He doesn't want peace. He wants to continue this war. And his negotiations that we're seeing at the moment, it's all a game to try to divide the West. He's not serious about peace. He's serious about manipulating the West to destroy the West relationship with Ukraine, so it makes Ukraine easier to defeat.
Bob, thank you for joining us. Bob's new book is called The New Total War, a fascinating overview of the conflict in Ukraine and why it matters not just for the Ukrainians, but for the wider world. Bob, thanks very much for joining us so early on a Saturday morning. We'll catch up again soon. My thanks to former Tory MP Bob Seeley. Steve N. Allen is my studio guest. Your reaction to what Bob had to say, particularly about this free speech row surrounding the incoming president of the Oxford Union?
Yeah, I'm glad that we can actually have the conversation about, you know, what would be hypocrisy, the idea that you have to leave people to say things that you disagree with, things that you think are bad. It's also true that I suppose times have changed. In the old days, if you had a really unpleasant take about some news story, like the Charlie Kirk one, you'd say it to your friends in a pub, and that'd be the end of it. And some of them, if it were really bad, would be like, oh, that's a bit out of order. These days, you send it on a private message, but you can screenshot everything. It's effectively published, and that impacts careers. So look, everyone's living in a slightly different world about what our comments can do to us if they hang around longer. So I think we have to be a bit more forgiving or understanding or fighting for people's right to say things that we think is terrible. You shouldn't lose your university career just over it, but you don't get to be President of the Union.
Steve, do join us again soon. It's been a delight to have you. My viewers and listeners are chipping in with their enthusiastic plaudits for your contribution this morning. So we'll catch up soon with the comedian and broadcaster Steve N. Allen. Next up, have Reform UK now, have they permanently replaced the Conservatives as the party of the right in this country? I'll be taking your calls on that next.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Would your enthusiasm for this Labour government increase if Keir Starmer stepped down as Prime Minister and was replaced by someone like Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Greater Manchester? Is a change of leadership now Labour's only hope? 03444991000. I'll get to your call shortly. In fact, let's start with Barry in Norwich. And Barry, let's talk about whether the Conservatives have been replaced now by Reform UK as the party of the right in this country.
Oh, most definitely. And listen to the Mark Seeley that you had on.
Bob Seeley, yeah, former
Bob
Tory
Seeley,
MP,
yeah.
who said it's too early to say. He said time. You said what did you say? It's early days.
Yeah, I don't. Well, I just wish he'd answered the questions. Yeah, I just think he can see that the Tory party are finished. Yeah, no one's listening to him. I'm not listening to them. They had 14 years to sort it out. If they were even a Conservative party, I don't even really think they were a Conservative party, to be honest. We had Boris Johnson, who's more of a Liberal than Conservative.
Yeah.
You got
open borders, net zero, high taxes, and illiberal lockdowns, right?
Crazy, yeah, absolutely mad. Then you got this Labour Party who are, well, you've got the corruption minister was sacked for corruption, the homeless minister sacked for booting out homeless people. You got Keir Starmer, who is more happy in Davos than he is in Westminster, trying to take it back through the EU through the back door. I got David Lammy as the deputy. It's an embarrassment to this country, to be frank. I think the last proper Conservative leader we had in this country, and it doesn't matter what side of the fence you stand on her. Personally, I was on the wrong side of the fence, but you have to admire her, was Margaret Thatcher.
Yeah.
You know, and that was the last proper leader we had of this country. All the rest since have been, and it's just been a nightmare.
Well, yeah, because what's happened, Barry, the entire political establishment has shifted left, and the Conservatives are no longer conservative.
Well, no, I had this conversation with a few people about, because I'm all for free speech. I'm a free speech absolutist. Yeah, right. I believe in free speech, free debate. I like Charlie Kirk. I used to watch him quite a lot, and I had a couple of conversations with a few people yesterday, going like, "Oh, I'm glad." I said, "Well, listen," I said, "at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether you believe in his political views or not. He was a 31-year-old father, husband, somebody's son, someone's brother, someone, and you know, all these all the left were going, and it's just, stop it. Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't get it if it was someone on the right. I mean, I'm on the right, saying that about the left. All hell would have broke loose. I mean, it's just crazy, and this government, they just don't do anything for this country. I mean, you heard, I don't know if you saw that on that clip on Sky News that Bridget Phillipson was in front of the Sky News reporter, I think Trevor Phillips, and he said, "Do you agree with what the council said in the High Court regarding the Bell Hotel when they said that the immigrants are more important than the local residents?" Then she said, "Yes." Now, for me, a government should be putting its citizens first. For me, I was brought up on strong military, strong border, strong government. And
law and order on the streets.
Yeah, strong government, law. Yeah, but now you've got people. I mean, who are these people coming into our country? We don't know who they are. Yeah, and there's just thousands of them coming in. Where I live, it's just changed completely. There's every hotel is just full of immigrants. It's just and no one knows who they are. And there's more of them now than there is the British military. Apparently, there's 178,000 illegal immigrants come over in the last 5 years, and so only 168,000 in the British Armed Forces. That's quite mad.
It is mad, Barry. We are in a really dark place, and the problem we've got is there's no optimism for the next few years as long as this Labour administration remain in charge, which, of course, mathematically is highly likely. Barry, thank you for your call. I hope we speak again soon. David is in Gloucester. David, would a change of leadership at the top of this government fix its problems? If Keir Starmer went and was replaced by Andy Burnham, would that encourage you?
No, because the rest of them are idiots. But I said to your producer, how do they manufacture Andy Burnham to even stand? Because somebody somewhere has got to stand down as an MP and produce a by-election to get Andy to stand. Now, OK, that might be the easy bit. You might be able to get some duffer, I don't want to say some old duffer, but somebody, we'll look after you, we'll come up with a health scare, blah, blah, blah. You stand down, we'll have a by-election. Well, I think right now, is there such thing as a really, really safe Labour seat? Because I would be amazed whether it's the North East, North West, we're the South West. I mean, that's anybody's guess. But, I really don't think there is a safe Labour seat in the country. And a by-election, I think people will probably vote Reform. And then where does that leave them?
Well, definitely, because Labour are going to lose ground to Reform, and they're going to lose ground to the Liberal Democrats in certain parts of the country, in the southeast, the southwest, and they're going to lose votes to independent pro-Gaza candidates around the country too.
Well, the guy here, we've got Matt Bishop here in the Forest of Dee. Now, I mean, he's on a 275, I think it was, Mark Harper, I mean, whether you like him or not, I wasn't a fan. He only lost by 275 seats.
Yeah.
Now I know I was a Reform voter, and I know a lot of people around here were, but you can't call that a majority. He might have won, but I wouldn't want to be sat here in Matt Bishop's shoes. And apparently, I was talking to somebody yesterday. Apparently, he was boasting around yesterday. Oh, the government have spent all this money on nursery places, and everybody's gone, what? What do you mean, the government? We're paying for it. And that's how people feel now.
Well, it is, and people are rightly angry. They're rightly frustrated. Listen, what a brilliant call. David in Gloucestershire, thank you very much. We'll catch up again soon. Next up, is America heading towards a political civil war? How split is the country? We'll be speaking to a former advisor to Bill Clinton and George Bush next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, now let's get more reaction to the murder of Charlie Kirk. What does the fallout from his murder tell us about the current state of American politics and indeed American society? I'm delighted to be welcoming Steve Gill, who is a former advisor to both the Clinton and Bush administrations. Hello, Steve.
Hey, Mark, good to be with you.
Just how divided is America now?
It was widely divided before, and this is not going to create more unity. But I do think it's interesting to look at the comparison when some hero of the left dies or is killed. The left goes out, burns up their cities, lights up, and explodes in passion. When a hero like Charlie Kirk dies, people light candles and hold candlelight vigils and pray. What a distinction. We are not the same as them.
Most definitely. Well, Steve, let's have a listen now to the widow of Charlie Kirk, Erica Kirk, reflecting on the tragedy of his murder. Let's take a listen. Now, we're just lining up that clip. Of course, you just cannot imagine, there are no words to describe what she's going through as she mourns the passing of her husband. We'll get that audio in just a moment, a small technical glitch. But Steve, what does the aftermath of Charlie Kirk's murder tell us about the modern left in the United States?
You know, we've seen it for the last, 6 to 9 months, where the left is so caught up in their Trump derangement syndrome that no matter what happens, they scream, they shout. If there's an issue that's an 80-20, 85-15 issue, they take the lower number and double and triple and quadruple down. And that's the sort of thing we're seeing in some case in the response to the assassination, the murder of Charlie Kirk, where you've seen these leftists not be able to show the just common decency to wait a minute, but they're, mocking, making fun, laughing. And many of them have lost their jobs in the last 24 hours at universities and in public official jobs. And look, I draw a distinction. If you're a public official, if you're in a power of trust, say you're a teacher, you're a professor, you're a firefighter, and you do this, you should be fired. If you're a private individual and you want to show yourself to be this kind of despicable character, then that's on you. If it's your private business, people can do business elsewhere. But if you're in a person that is in authority and power over others, and you laugh at the death of anyone, I don't care if it's Charlie Kirk or someone else, you don't deserve to keep that position. And nearly 1,000 people have lost their jobs as a result. Now, I was kidding with some of my friends this evening that the loss of all these jobs by these nitwit, crazy left-wingers will now see Trump being blamed for the increase in unemployment as a result. So they'll still have their Trump derangement syndrome, and they'll blame him.
Is there any hope for the left in the United States? Can they reclaim sanity and the moral high ground?
I don't see them taking that path. And when you get to the clip of Erica Kirk, I think it will be profound in not only how strong she is, how capable she is, and I don't know that she's the replacement to Charlie Kirk. I think it's kind of like President Trump. I don't know what the Republicans do after he moves on, because he's a once in a millennia politician. He defies gravity politically constantly. Charlie Kirk was amazing, more brilliant than I think people understand until you watch many of his clips. And I don't know if Erica can step in. When you watch this speech, you start to think, yeah, maybe that's who can step in. But I don't know who steps in and continues that function. But I do know that the Democrats don't have anybody on their side who is prepared and capable, articulate, and from a policy standpoint, offering something that the American people want.
Of course, the tragedy for this lady, this widow, Erica Kirk, is that it's not her calling, is it, Steve? It's not her destiny to do the job of her late husband. The arrangement they had within their marriage is that he goes out there and he campaigns and also propounds, his spiritual beliefs as well as a devout Christian. And her job was to stay home and raise the family. And that was the arrangement they had.
But I think that she will be a face of Charlie Kirk now. Here we go. I guess we can listen now.
Yeah, let's take a listen, Steve. Here we are. This is the widow of the late Charlie Kirk, Erica Kirk, speaking just a few moments ago.
We should all know this. If you thought that my husband's mission was powerful before, you have no idea. You have no idea what you just have unleashed across this entire country. In this world, you have no idea. You have no idea the fire that you have ignited within this wife The cries of this widow will echo around the world like a battle cry. To everyone listening tonight across America, the movement my husband built will not die. It won't. I refuse to let that happen. It will not die.
Incredibly moving words, Steve Gill. What will be the legacy of Charlie Kirk's murder?
You know, he has brought millions of young people into the political process that have been activated, that have been engaged, beyond their previous desire to be involved in the political process, and that legacy will continue. Again, I don't know that Erica will be the voice that Charlie was, but she could certainly help be the face of that movement. There was a great meme I saw today with an image of Charlie Kirk and Jesus embracing in heaven, and Charlie Kirk asking Jesus who will pick up the mic, because he famously used that mic that he would hold when he would hold his campus events. And then there's a mic laying on the ground, and Jesus says, someone will pick up the mic, Charlie. I think people are waiting to see who picks up that mic. And it may be multiple people. There may be multiple voices that go out and engage those college students, those young people. They won't have the articulate genius that he was, the ability to debate and to listen. I mean, the real tragedy, Mark, of this particular death is this is a guy who engaged in conversation, not confrontation, who engaged in discussion, not the divisiveness that we have too much of in this country and around the world. He was the best at what we seek in trying to find the intellectual discussion that leads to common understanding, or at least a better understanding of where we differ from a logical and intellectual standpoint. So of all the targets you could have, he was the worst of the targets because he was the best at what he was doing.
As a result of this, will the tide of conservatism rise further in the United States? Is America going to shift right now?
I think it's been on that track line, and it's that center right where Republicans have been making gains, where conservatives have been making gains. And frankly, we're seeing it around the world as well. We're seeing it in Germany with AfD. We're seeing it in France with the collapse of the French government. We're seeing it in the UK with Raise the Colors today. We are seeing this populist conservative embrace of traditional values all over the world. And certainly I think we're going to continue to see that in the U.S. Again, because the leadership of the left and the Democratic Party are still out there shouting the terms of fascist and Nazi and the hate speech, and then denying their role in it. And they're not talking about what matters to Americans. They're talking about what matters to them and their small base, whether it's pushing men into women's locker rooms, whether it's continuing to push late term and the most horrific forms of abortion, whether it's the economic policies that have not worked, whether it's the embrace of illegal aliens in states like California and across our country that are creating crimes. When you see Democrats in Washington, D.C. protesting against law enforcement that has reduced the murder rate, the death rate, and the crime rate in D.C., and they're actually out there protesting in favor of crime, they have lost their bleeping minds.
Indeed. And why has that happened? How have the left so readily departed with common sense and logic?
Boy, that's a great question. And I don't know how they regain it. When you look at policies that don't work, with the arguments that fail, and yet they keep, again, doubling and tripling down on them. I think it's because they so fear their woke radical base in their primaries. In the U.S., we have these primary elections, Republicans and Democrats, and the MAGA crowd on the Republican side is the dominant force. And you see Republican candidates that would dare not challenge Trump and Trump policies and MAGA. But on the left, you have nobody who's willing to challenge the radical, most woke, most extreme left, because they will not win their primaries. So it just keeps pushing their party to the left, and that is pushing it away from the values of what Americans believe in.
Steve, before I let you go, does what happened to Charlie Kirk this week increase the likelihood of a Republican president in the White House in 4 years' time?
I think it does. And I think it's interesting that Elon Musk apparently this week is already talking about abandoning his thoughts of creating a third party and instead getting actively behind J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance is, kind of the heir apparent anyway as a MAGA VP to Donald Trump. He escorted Erica to the funeral of Charlie Kirk. He is in the prime position, and I think he is in a great position to succeed Donald Trump and inherit that MAGA crown.
And where does America go from here? Some people are talking about a political civil war. Well, I think we're fully in the throes of that already, aren't we, Steve? Some talking about the country splitting. Is that possible? Is that conceivable in the years ahead?
I don't think so, although I think, we have a key turning point, to kind of use the term that was Charlie Kirk, of do we turn away from this kind of political violence? Do we see retribution and revenge and reaction from the right that will make this snowball into continued violence? I don't think that will happen. Again, I think when you see Republicans, when something tragic like this happens, we light candles and we have a prayer vigil. We don't go burn our own cities down. And on the left, that's how they react. The governor of Utah pointed that out, that in the wake of this murder, people didn't loot and burn cities in Utah. So I think we are not as close as people may expect. Just because of the way Democrats react doesn't mean that those of us on the right react in the same way.
Steve, a privilege to have you on the programme. I hope we get to speak again in the near future. My thanks to Steve Gill, a former top advisor to the Clinton and Bush administrations. Next up, another day, another prosecution for a hate crime. This time, the former police officer who has been found guilty of a hate crime because of his belief that there are two biological sexes. Make it make sense. He's live on the show next.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Lots more to come in the show. Rachel from Accounts is in trouble. The economy has now officially ground to a halt with growth at 0% in July. Folks, this is not a drill. We are in recession territory. So is Rachel Reeves about to break a manifesto promise by raising either income tax, VAT or national insurance? We'll get to that. Plus, the monologue is back. My Dolan dispatch is all about the fallout from the murder of Charlie Kirk and why it matters to you and I here in the UK. But let's also talk about another very important issue, and that is free speech. We've got a former police officer and founder of Fair Cop who has been subjected to something ridiculous, which is a hate crime. And it's been recorded as a hate crime regarding some gender-critical remarks that he made a couple of years ago. I'm delighted to say that Harry Miller, former police officer and founder of Fair Cop, joins me now. Hello, Harry. Top of the morning to you.
Good morning, Mark. I mean, things just get absolutely crazier and crazier and crazier. Every time we go to the court and we win, it doesn't change anything. Suella Braverman issued more. What the hell was that?
Was that Suella calling you on FaceTime?
Stop, hold on a minute.
There you go. Welcome to live radio and TV, folks. So I'll tell you something.
Oh my God, that's
never a dull moment.
That's Siri having a go at me, but there we go.
I thought it was the missus, but there you go.
No. It goes absolutely crazy because the police are completely and utterly out of control. They take no notice from any. My God, what's going on?
I'll tell you something.
Oh, I've unplugged it.
Never work with children, animals, and former police officers.
Yeah, and Siri. My God, it's terrible. Yeah, so what happened was, for 2 years, I was stalked by a police officer, a trans police officer called Lindsay Watson. Now, I wasn't just stalked by this man. He sent me over 850 messages. He reported me to the anti-terrorist unit. He said, and get this, he said that I was running a terrorist cell, an international terrorist cell, with the then Home Secretary, Suella Braverman. And he did all this under cover of SOC accounts. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because he used those SOC accounts because he was ordered to by his own chief constable. They said, if you're going to harass Harry Miller, please do not bring the chief constable's reputation into disrepute. Go undercover, use fake identities. That's what he did. Anyway, I eventually got him sacked and placed on the barred list, but that's not where it ends. I wrote an article about him in The Critic called My Police Stalker, in which I said I was not stalked by a woman, I was stalked by a man. 1 year later, the police knocked on my door and said that I had contravened the newly minted Online Safety Acts by spreading false information about this lunatic's sex, which had caused him extreme psychological harm. And I was told that I had to come in under threat of arrest for that, Mark. So that's where we are. I told them that they were talking complete and utter nonsense. I ended up, in actual fact, arresting the police sergeant for being so stupid and for harassing me. Of course, the police just immediately let him go. But there we go, two-tier policing and all that. And then it turned out that even though they didn't actually follow up on that ridiculous action, I put in a subject access request, and when it came back, it said that I was guilty of having committed the hate crime of stalking. So me commenting about the sex of my stalker made me the stalker. So that's where we are.
We're in a dark place where you're essentially, you receive censure from the authorities and from the police for essentially maintaining the view that there are two biological sexes and that you can't change your sex, which, by the way, happens to be the view of the Supreme Court.
Yeah, but that didn't matter. They weren't bothered about that. It was quite funny because when the police officer, a sergeant from CID no less, was questioning me, he kept calling Lindsay Watson he. And I said, you're doing it. You yourself are doing it. He said, it doesn't matter what I do. He said, the fact of the matter is, she thinks she's a she, and you've written that he's a he. I said, you've just done it again. Nevertheless,
indeed. Just be
said,
glad it wasn't gender neutral and you started got calling them they, them and all of that nonsense. What are the implications now? Because I think your post on X has been recorded as a hate crime. Is that right? And are there implications for you with regards to that?
Yes, not a non-crime hate incident. We got rid of those. We supposedly got rid of those years ago. No, this was escalated to a hate crime. So get this. I wasn't charged. I wasn't questioned about stalking. I wasn't put in front of a jury. I wasn't summoned. I wasn't bailed. Anything. The police decided just off their own bat just to decide that I was guilty of the hate crime of stalking. And yes, the consequences of this are very, very grave. It means that were I to be applying for a job, then the marker would come up, Harry Miller, guilty of a hate crime. Now, any employer seeing that is immediately going to bin that application. They're not going to be interested in the what's, wherefores or whys of it. They're not going to be interested in any of that. My application is going straight in the bin. But I'll tell you somebody else there are going to be consequences too, and that is the Chief Constable, because I am gunning for that Chief Constable with every fibre of my being. There is no excuse for this level of incompetence. There is no excuse for teaming up with a psychopathic former police officer in order to continue his stalking by proxy. So I am coming for Lincolnshire Police. I'm coming for the Chief Constable, and he's going to have a very, very bad day in the not too distant future, by which I do not mean, by the way, behaving like the loony left and attacking him personally. I will use the rule of law to drag him through the courts and to make sure that this sort of thing stops, and stops finally, because we are sick of it, Mark.
What does your case tell us about the culture of policing in Britain in 2025?
It tells us that they are completely and utterly stupid, that the law is the very last thing that they consider. Facts and evidence, these are the very last things that they consider. And the willingness for them to team up with a former colleague, a former police officer who was booted out of the job in order to harass and attack not only me, but this is the same lunatic that organised the Graham Linehan arrest. Yeah. This is the same lunatic who has gone on and on and on and reports everybody for everything all the time. And the police are so dumb, the police are so captured, the police are so willing to bow to this craziness that they do not apply any common sense, any rationality. They just go, ooh, let's go get the bad man. And that's what happens here. So I'm sick to death of shouting from every rooftop, from being on GB News, from being on talk radio. I'm sick of doing this. I'm sick of going back and forth to the courts. It's time for people to be sacked. I want the Chief Constable firing, but not only that, I want the officer firing. I want every single officer who was engaged in this lunacy out of uniform. They are not fit to wear the shirt. They are not fit to carry a warrant. They are not fit to have that kind of authority over members of the public. They need to go get another job because they are simply unfit.
Is British policing in the grip of woke ideology, do you think?
It's in the grip of something, woke ideology and stupidity, I think. I think the law is the very last thing that young police officers consider anymore. They have this idea that perception is everything, that the protection of feelings is primary, that the normal analogue crimes like theft, etc., these are yesteryear's crimes. Their job now is to police speech, to police feelings, to go after right-wing ghouls. They think that is their job, and it's not their job. If they are interested in that kind of thing, go join a human rights society. Go join Stonewall. Go become a political campaigner. But listen, do not become a police officer, because you have one job, and that is two actually: to know the law and to enforce the law. That's it. And you can't do the job if you have such scant disregard for the law. It's as simple as that. So every single one of them needs to be gone. They are not suitable to be police officers. They are not the right caliber, not the right character. They don't have the right intellect. They need to be gone and do something else. And I'm coming for them.
Harry, what has this ordeal put you through personally and emotionally?
Well, you know what? The first time this happened to me was back in 2019. I'm an old hand at this now. I've got very, very thick skin. This sort of thing happens, and I shrug my shoulders, write a letter, call up the news, and I'm relatively chilled about it. But I've been through the mill. I'm an old hand, actually. But for most people, when the police knock on their door, it is absolutely terrifying. When the police say that unless you comply with our request for voluntary interview, we will arrest you, that makes people shudder, because the threat of arrest from a uniformed officer or a CID officer in this case is chilling. And even myself, I've been arrested. I've been thrown in the back of a police car. I've spent time in the cells over free speech issues. Even for me, it leaves you slightly cold. It leaves you slightly worried because, of course, there's not just yourself. There's the shame that it brings on your family. There's the worry that it brings on your kids.
It's completely unjustified. Harry, thank you so much for joining us. Good luck fighting the fight. We'll catch up soon. Harry Miller there, former cop and founder of Fair Cop. Next up, it's the Dolan Dispatch. Don't go anywhere.
Very good morning to you, by the way. Morning, Tory, with me, Mark Dolan.
Just some breaking news for you coming out of Liverpool Crown Court.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the programme. Welcome to the home of common sense.
Loads to talk about, I promise you that. Loads and loads and loads.
Yes, it's me again, your genial host, Kevin O'Sullivan.
How realistic do you think a ceasefire is this week?
There's a very good chance that we'll have a settlement, an agreement of some kind.
We basically have two countries that are...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good morning to you. I am Mark Dolan, and this is Talk, the home of common sense. A packed 2 hours for you. The fallout from the murder of prominent Conservative US activist Charlie Kirk continues. And here in the UK, pressure grows on the student and incoming president of the Oxford Union, supposedly a platform for free and respectful debate, who openly celebrated the news of the shooting. Should he step down as the president of this debating society? And is Liz Truss right that he should be expelled from Oxford University? So after almost an entirely disastrous 14 months in power, the sharks are circling for the Prime Minister Keir Starmer, with his arch-rival, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, reportedly plotting a leadership bid. With the ignominious departure of several government figures, including Angela Rayner and now UK Ambassador to the US, Peter Mandelson, with an economy flatlining, illegal immigration through the roof, and a very unhappy party on his backbenches, is Starmer on his way out? Is he on borrowed time? And would a change at the top encourage you to support this Labour government, who have limped from crisis to crisis? The economy has now officially ground to a halt, with growth at 0% in July. Not great news for Rachel from accounts and her £50 million black hole. So is the Chancellor about to think the unthinkable, break her manifesto pledge and raise income tax, VAT and/or national insurance? Also this morning, should we scrap indefinite leave to remain for low-skilled workers coming to the UK? That's the view of a leading Conservative MP. Will get reaction. And today sees several marches in the capital, the most prominent of which will be led by the political activist Tommy Robinson. So who is this man and what are his motivations? Is Tommy Robinson a fearless patriot giving a voice to millions, or is he a dangerous thug that seeks only division? We'll debate that shortly. And it is Saturday, so we're going to have some fun. I'm here to set you up for a cracking weekend, and your opinions are my priority, so book your place on the show. Tommy is taking your calls this morning. 0344 499 1000. Send me a text and let's talk. Well, a very, very busy couple of hours. It's great to be back on the home of Common Sense Talk. And let me tell you that we're going to kick off this hour with the Dolan Dispatch. Why does the cold-blooded murder of a Conservative commentator in America matter to you and me? It matters because it reflects the dark malignancy, the intolerance and the violence of the left. Which is why figures on the right in this country, Nigel Farage being the most high-profile among them, require top-level security, whilst many others face abuse, death threats and cancellation. Now, the Americans have seen the evil face of radical leftism with the shocking footage of this talented and provocative 31-year-old political commentator shot in the neck while seeking to hold a balanced and fair debate at a university campus in Utah. And yet, the response to this tragedy, which has seen a wife widowed and 2 small children orphaned, has been just as chilling here in the United Kingdom as it has been in America. Whilst lefties in America have been celebrating this tragedy, with some announcing which are the right-wingers they'd like to be shot next, in the UK, at the venerated institution of Oxford University, no less, the incoming president of the Oxford Union, which exists to support and encourage open debate, has been cheering on the murder of Charlie Kirk. Now, this is George Aberonia, who has actually debated Charlie Kirk face to face. So he celebrated the murder of someone that he's actually met, shaken the hand of and engaged with. That is the heartlessness, the pathology within British leftism. So George Aberonia, who takes on this prestigious role of president of the Oxford Union, a role previously held by the likes of William Gladstone, Benazir Bhutto and Sir Robin Day and Tony Benn, he wrote a message to friends in the aftermath of this murder saying Charlie Kirk got shot and, I quote, "let's effing go." That's what he wrote. Charlie Kirk got shot, let's effing go. All right, and this is a guy that's going to be the front and centre of Britain's free speech platform, the Oxford Union. He also celebrated in another message where he wrote, Charlie Kirk got shot, lol, which translates as laugh out loud for anyone that's listening that's under 50. The reaction to Charlie Kirk's cold-blooded and horrific murder is indicative of the cancer that is now in our society, and it is radical leftism. It is a problem of the left. And it's an ideology which hates people that have another view and that wants to label anyone that thinks differently as a Nazi or a fascist. And what are these abhorrent views that the radical left hate so much? The belief that there are two sexes, that's apparently fascism. That our country is something to be proud of. That borders are there for a reason. The importance of law and order or sound economic management. The strategic importance of energy independence. The sanctity of life and the importance of family and community. Apparently, according to the woke left, that's fascism. You're a Nazi and you are far right. Now, I've experienced the dark cruelty of the left myself online, partly for calling out those ruinous lockdowns that have absolutely destroyed our country. The worst abuse always comes from people with pronouns in their bio who call themselves anti-racist or proud socialist. They have the pride flag, the flag of Palestine on their social media, but God forbid that they should have the flag of their own country. Many of these people who are extraordinarily toxic, dangerous, violent and nasty use the hashtag #BeKind. But we've discovered in the last 24 hours following the murder of this 31-year-old man that they are anything but kind. The modern woke left is very different from old school lefties who worried about poverty and inequality and ordinary people. This is the modern woke left, suffused with more than a whiff of Marxist thinking, which sneers at the working classes, which advocates insane, economically illiterate ideas, which tells children at school that they're racist because of the colour of their skin and that they must atone for some historic crime and apologise for their so-called white privilege. This is the modern woke left, which demonises Israel, the only democracy in the Middle East, for responding to an existential threat by the terror group Hamas. This is the modern woke left that tells children they're trapped in the wrong body and should undergo operations and chemical treatment to change their sex. This is the modern woke left that hates Western values of freedom, tolerance and free enterprise. The authors of cancel culture, the modern woke left, detest free speech, and if you dare to disagree with them and offer some common sense views shared by the majority, you apparently are a dangerous threat, and your words apparently are violence. Now, Charlie Kirk's remarkable life was not in vain. That he was taken from us will simply embolden the rest of us to stand up for what is right and to defend the whole Western experiment, which leftist forces are trying to dismantle and destroy. This movement, the woke left, is intrinsically, in its very DNA, anti-Western, anti-freedom, anti-everything we stand for. Now, the great irony is the woke left think that they're the good people and that everyone else is bad. But of course, they are the so-called fascists, because the definition of fascism is the hateful and violent aversion to another view. Does that sound familiar? That is what they are. The ideological tyranny of the woke left must be defeated, and the voices of sensible liberalism, the old school lefties, must re-emerge. This is an intellectual and moral battle, not a physical one. It's not physical because violence is always wrong. But those sick left-wing ghouls didn't get the memo that violence is wrong, including the president of the Oxford Union. I honestly don't think that these people are well. They're not right in the head, infected as they are by the woke mind virus, which allows them to celebrate the murder of a husband and a father to 2 young children. These wicked people have taken Charlie Kirk, but what they haven't taken is his ideas. They haven't taken his values. They haven't taken his vision. Charlie Kirk has handed the baton to all of the rest of us to win. And win we must. The future of our children and grandchildren depends on it. Charlie Kirk, may you rest in peace. Your reaction, 0344 499 1000. Let me know if you disagree with what I've had to say, but I believe that the aftermath of the murder of Charlie Kirk demonstrates a pathological malignancy within the political left, and it's proved to be not just unwelcome in terms of cancel culture, but now actually dangerous. Angus is in East Yorkshire. Top of the morning, Angus.
Top of the morning to you, Mark.
Listen, what's the weather up to in East Yorkshire at the moment? Because I can tell you in the southeast it's dicey. We've got rain and then a bit of sunshine, then a rain again.
Typical English people, we talk about the weather. Beautiful sunny day actually in East Yorkshire.
Lucky you. Nice part of the world, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Yeah, but it's a lovely day.
Angus, can I ask for your honest response to my Dolan dispatch there, and what you think that the aftermath of this man's murder tells us about modern politics?
Well, it was very powerful. You've just about said everything. I made a few notes before I came on, and yeah, I mean, the trouble is at the moment we have this rebooted Marxism all the time. I mean, wasn't it enough that they killed 100 or 200 million in the 20th century? So they reboot it in a different form. In actual fact, I think you're being too kind to them by calling it woke. It's a rebooted form of Marxism that we're dealing with. And you're absolutely 100% right. There's zero tolerance. They call it kindness or something. They lose the debates, they lose the arguments at the Oxford Union or wherever. I mean, Charlie, went all over the United States, didn't they? Yeah. College campuses, and gave people a fair hearing, always. And he debated with them, and he, at times made some of their arguments and views look a bit stupid, but because he debated with logic and common sense, Mark. Yeah. And what a great guy. I mean, my girlfriend Karen was a huge Charlie fan. She was bereft a couple of nights ago, and I said, well, at the end of the day, what can you do? We don't light candles. We've got to stand up and have zero tolerance of these sort of people. And you've been referring to this guy, and I call him a guy, supposed president of the Oxford Union Debating Society. What a disgrace that person is. He was destroyed, by the way, wasn't he, in a debate by Charlie?
He was. I mean, the idea that you could celebrate the murder, not just of any public figure, but, Angus, to celebrate the murder of someone that you've met, that you've shared a stage with, whose hand you've shaken.
It's absolutely appalling. I mean, it really is. Absolutely appalling. I mean, the trouble is, Mark, we have got a lot of our institutions completely and utterly infected with this poison. And I mean, some people call it the blob, if it's government, or various other institutions that are completely and utterly intolerant to different views from their own. Isn't that correct?
Well, it is, and it's the, as you say, the blob. It's the public sector. It's actually the corporate sector as well, which is crazy woke. If you look at the banks where they make people have a name badge which says their pronouns, it's the media and the political class, I think. Angus?
The lanyard classes, as they're known these
lanyard
days.
Classes, yeah. I know I'd like to do with those lanyards.
But you're absolutely right. I mean, you put it perfectly in your monologue there. But it's what we do now, and you're quite right. I mean, there's going to be this big thing going on with Tommy Robinson today in London. Unfortunately, I can't get down there for that. Not that I'm going to make a big difference to it, but it's about freedom of speech. It's about freedom of expression for the English and the British in this country, and to actually say that, as you've said, we're proud of our history, we're proud of our flag.
And on that, we can agree. Angus, really enjoyed your company this morning. Call me again in the near future. Angus in East Yorkshire. Angus, sorry, I interrupted you there. This is the home of free speech as well as common sense. What were you going to say?
No,
I think the line dropped for a second there. What were you going to finish with?
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, listen, Angus, we'll catch up soon. Thank you very much. A lovely sunny day there in East Yorkshire. Don't we have a beautiful country, which we should celebrate and enjoy? Is Liz Truss right? This student should not just lose his position as president of the Oxford Union, this debating society. Should he be expelled from the university? We'll discuss that next.
I think it is very, very unlikely that anyone would have prevented the Prime Minister seeing that security information, which we're now being told contained information about Mandelson's ongoing relationship with Epstein. And that's to say that the Prime Minister actually knew about this all along.
Yeah.
And I think that casts major doubt over his judgment, and he has enormously serious questions to answer. So what we're going to try and do is we're going to push the government to publish that information, put it on the public record so we can all see who knew what when.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Listen, folks, we've got so much to get through. My brilliant political panel are with me in the studio, but I'm itching to take a call from Mary in Hemel Hempstead. Mary, welcome to Talk. Do you think that this student at Oxford University should not just lose the presidency of the Oxford Union? Should he be chucked out altogether?
Yes, definitely. I understand that his grades weren't that good anyway, and that he's probably got in there through diversity and whatever, DEI, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's really very fortunate where he is, and he's abusing it.
And therefore, do you not think, Mary, though, that there is a double standard, that if we're very keen for people to have free speech, and that at the same time throw them out of university for comments they've made, is that not a double standard?
Definitely. definitely. It's a case that it's only what they had to say that's important, not what anybody else opposes it.
Mary, what was your emotion when you heard that Charlie Kirk, this Conservative commentator, had been shot in cold blood whilst at a university debate?
Well, actually, I burst into tears. I mean, it was just so, because he was only young, and I just couldn't believe it. It's just ridiculous. I still can't quite get to grips that the man didn't do anything wrong.
Most definitely.
I'm staying on that Tommy Robinson march.
Why is there so much hatred from one side to the other?
I don't know. I don't know when it started. Did it start with the Brexit debate? It just seems to have gone from there when you've got families that weren't talking to one another? Did it start with even way back with the miners' strike? Some miners' families weren't talking. When did it start? It's as if, almost as if everything's been, infiltrated by an enemy of some kind.
I think that's very perceptive. I think you're right. You can go back to Thatcher and the miners. Brexit, you mentioned. I think COVID was a big one. The war in Gaza. We just can't get along, Mary, and we don't seem to listen to each other.
No, we don't. And I'm hoping on this march today, which I'm 88 and I'm going on this march with my buggy. Well, it's more like a stroll, I think, really. But I'm just hoping that, and I've never really been I didn't really know much about Tommy Robinson and only took notice of him over the past few years because he exposed the grooming gangs and was so put down because of it. And I thought, well, what's going wrong with him here? And so followed him gradually. And I just think that unless we stand up, we're finished. We're not going to have our country anymore.
What will you, briefly, Mary, what will you be fighting for when you go on this march today? What exactly is at stake for you?
I want my country back. I want the country that I knew. I remember when Mrs. Thatcher was in power, we used to say, I'm proud to be British, and we felt proud. We felt a happiness to a certain amount, a contentment. I know that she didn't get everything right, but the point, and they go on about the miners and close the mines, but Wilson closed more mines than Mrs. Thatcher. And would you want your children these days to go down into a coal mine anyway?
Most definitely. Mary, stay safe today on the march. You're obviously entitled to have that opportunity to protest, and I hope you're able to express your views and feel heard. Mary and Hemel Hempstead there. Thank you, Mary. Call me again soon. I'm delighted now to be joined in the studio by the former Labour MP, Simon Danczuk, and the former Conservative Special Advisor, Charlie Rowley. Simon, Mary wants her country back. Can you relate to that impulse and that emotion?
Yeah, absolutely. And Mary spoke so much sense, didn't she? You know, in contrast, by the way, to George Aberoni, who's the president of the Oxford Union, who's been speaking absolute nonsense for the last several days. What a contrast that is. I mean, yeah, Mary wants her country back, and good on her going out there in her 80s protesting. People have had it up to here in terms of how the woke left have been running this country, how they've been really putting the country down, and that's continued dramatically under Keir Starmer, and people are beginning to get the voice, and I'm really pleased about that.
These marches are going to make a lot of headlines in the next 24 hours. There is a danger, Charlie, that they'll be hijacked by agitators. What's your view about what's about to play out in the capital today?
Well, the first thing to say is that I think Mary said it's one of the first marches she's ever been on, and at the age of 8, in her 80s, you know, that is telling in itself. You know, never before has anybody felt motivated enough to come to central London to take part in a march and a protest because she feels as though there's something lost about Britain. And I think when people say they want their country back, whilst you might have a counter-protest who want to say this is far-right issues, these are people that are just part of an English nationalist movement, it's not. I think when people say they want their country back, it's a sense of fairness fairness that's been lost. So when, it's about giving to your country rather than taking away from your country. It's about the integration that we don't seem to have. It's about the lack of cohesion. It's about the lack of respect. It's about crime going through the roof. I think all of these things where we don't feel safe, where we don't feel plugged in as a society anymore, that's when people say, I want to get back to a situation where actually I can have a debate with someone, actually, and I can disagree, amicably, but we can move forward and focus on the positives that we all share, rather than actually seeing people pay into a system. And yet you see a lot of people come into this country illegally that seem to be able to skip the queue, get the 5-star quality hotels and all the rest of it, when there are people in this country, British hard-working taxpayers, that have been left behind.
The march that's happening today in central London will no doubt be energised by the awful murder of Charlie Kirk, won't it?
Totally. And, as Mary said, I stayed up quite late last night, funny enough, and I watched Erica, Mrs. Kirk, give her sort of speech on the back of obviously losing her husband. And this is the thing, this was a 31-year-old boy, really, in political terms.
And he wasn't a politician.
He wasn't a politician. He was someone who had views, and even if you disagreed with them, the whole premise was to go to universities, of all places, where you should be able to have a debate, where you should be able to have a discussion, however much you disagree with someone, but have the conversation. And his whole mantra about the idea that if you stop having conversation, that's when violence sets in. I mean, the irony of trying to have a conversation with people, and then the ultimate act of violence takes place, and he loses his life. This is such a tragedy, and this is why I think people are going to be even more agitated now, because the idea that someone who has been vocal, who has put his head above the parapet to try and have a conversation about conservatism in America, something that had been, I think, for too long put to one side because of wokery and a left-wing ideology that infiltrated a lot of universities, a lot of schools, and just social media and all the rest of it. So he fought back against that. A lot of people agreed with that, but he just wanted to have a conversation with people. That's been taken away. That's the shock of all of this. A young man able to put his head above the parapet and try and move the dial and just create conversation and debate. That's now been taken away.
And there has been this assumption that people on the left are the nice guys. I mean, it's utterly nonsense, but there is that assumption, and the people on the left think they've got it right, and that their argument is the correct one, and that they're the good people. I mean, the reality is that people on the left, and I find this on social media and elsewhere, are the most extreme aggressive people. That's the reality of it, and I think we need a reality check. I think they're becoming more aggressive the more they are losing the argument, whether it's about immigration, around other issues. They're becoming more aggressive. And I have to recount the story. I stood for reform. I went from Labour to Reform, stood for Reform in the by-election in February 2024, parliamentary by-election. I received a death threat, a significant death threat, threw my campaign into complete turmoil. Finally, the guy that made the death threat is in court on Tuesday, which is good news, but it's took a long time to get there. This is somebody who threatened to kill me during a by-election campaign. How have we got to this stage?
You are a former Labour MP. When did you first start to notice that the left was beginning to change and that this intolerant mentality began to take hold?
That's a really interesting question. I lost faith with the Labour Party when Ed Miliband became leader, and then it got even worse when we had Corbyn as leader, and then Starmer to follow that. I mean, it's gone from bad to worse. But it was certainly intolerant under Corbyn. That's definitely the case. Much more aggressive. The people on the far left were much more aggressive.
And several Labour MPs who were Jewish actually stood down because life was so awful for them.
Yes, absolutely, yeah, and left the party, in fact. Yeah, that's absolutely right. So we mustn't forget the anti-Semitism that's come from the left, not from the right, from the left. It's fascinating, really. It's awful.
Well, folks, here's the million-dollar question. This student at the Oxford University, the incoming president of the Oxford Union, many seem to think that his position as the president of this venerated debating society is no longer tenable. But the bigger question is whether Liz Truss is right that he should be expelled as a student from the university. We'll debate that next.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A big response to the Dolan dispatch. Yes, folks, the monologue is back, and I believe that in the aftermath of the Charlie Kirk murder, we're seeing the dark underbelly of modern leftism. This from Maureen in Stamford. Morning, Mark. Your monologue was spot on. I honestly can't imagine that any sane person could disagree with any of your powerful words. Well, obviously, if you do disagree, then please let me know, because this is the home of common sense and the home of free speech. 03444 499 1000. Excellent monologue, Mark. You would make a fine MP, Barry. I think the country's got enough problems already. And this from Jason. Mark, the mass debater at Oxford should be expelled. He only got into Oxford as a DEI pick. Many with much better grades didn't get into Oxford. They want it one way, but he has to be expelled immediately. Your dispatch this morning was monumental. It should be read out in schools. The left are deranged. Thank you for that. I do encourage you, though, to call me if you disagree, because plenty will, and that's the point about open debate. I don't have the details, by the way, on this young man's academic status, how he got into university. I cannot confirm that his tutelage at the Oxford University is a result of diversity policies. I don't have that information to hand, but you are entitled to your view. Please keep them coming. With me in the studio, Simon Danchuk and Charlie Rowley. Charlie, should this young man lose the presidency of the Oxford Union?
Yes, is the answer.
Even though the Oxford Union is about the tolerance of other ideas and free speech, and you can be as outrageous as you want, and no one's got a right to be offended?
Well, there are two things. So I think he should lose it. I think he should stay at Oxford University. I wouldn't kick him out of the university for a number of reasons. And I think the first is the vitriol and the hate towards Charlie Kirk, for example, was because I think he had a lot of views. A lot of them I don't agree with personally, but he has a right to air them. And you can be young, you can be 18, 19, 20, you can say things that are wrong, things that you believe in, you can change your mind, you can go on a journey. That is the whole point of being a young person, that's the whole point of being in politics, that's the whole point of having this idea of debate and free speech. So I don't think this kid, even though what he said is absolutely abhorrent and glorifying somebody's death is right, but so that's why I would strip away the Oxford Union role, because you can have free speech, and I absolutely advocate for free speech. Obviously, I want that, but there is a line between free speech and hate speech. Now, that doesn't mean hate speech you need to go around locking people up for tweets and messages, private messages, as they were, but there is a line. And content needs to be removed if it is hate speech, if it's glorifying hate, if it's inciting violence and terrorism and all the rest of it. That needs to be removed. So you can have free speech up until a point, until it becomes intolerable. But also, if you're in a position of responsibility, you can't just go around saying what the hell you like. You can't be an MP or the Prime Minister or a presenter on a radio station and just have total free speech. There are rules and regulations because of Ofcom. There are responsibilities that you have to your audience, to your viewers, to your constituents, to your union debating society, to the university that you represent. So you're entitled to your view. He could, as a student, he can say what the hell he likes. But when you're in a position of responsibility, such as is the president of the Oxford Union at Oxford University, an internationally prestigious university, there's a responsibility there. He's fallen well short of that responsibility. So of course he should be sacked or have to blocked, or however the process would be to take up that role because of its responsibility on an international level. Oxford is a brilliant university that everybody wants to go to, but I think that's where we draw the line.
Simon, would you expel him?
No, I wouldn't expel him, actually. I think he's well, the smart thing for him to do would be to resign as the president of the Oxford Union. That would be the smart thing to do. The problem is he's not very smart. He's a bit thick, isn't he? Else he wouldn't have said what he said. But that would be the smart thing to do. And, a mea culpa, I've got it wrong, I shouldn't have said it, I apologise wholeheartedly, and I'm standing down because, it's not good for the organisation that I'm supposed to represent. That would be the sensible thing for him to do. I suspect he's not going to do that. I don't think he should be expelled. as has been, Charlie says, you know, people, especially young people, can say I still say the wrong thing. You know, we all do.
That's why we get you on here.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, no, it makes sense. But I don't think he should be expelled. But I mean, what he said, there should be some consequences, though. I think he should lose the role without a doubt, and there should be pressure on him to step down from that role, undoubtedly.
Most definitely. Are the right guilty of double standards, though? You've got former Prime Minister Simon Liz Truss calling for him to be expelled from university, and yet those on the right claim to be all about free speech.
Yeah, no, it is a bit of a double standard, and it's very easy to call for people to resign and stand down, especially in politics, and I think that's always a mistake. I think we should be more careful about how we approach that. We can't have double standards. This is about free speech. He's said something that's utterly stupid. I think it'll probably ruin his career, so in terms of consequences, he's not done himself any favours anywhere. But no, I think Liz Truss should pull back from making those sort of suggestions.
Simon, is there a mitigating factor, which is the fact that this young man wrote these messages in private messages? So I think one was on WhatsApp, and my understanding is the other one was a private message on Instagram. Yeah. So he's not actually broadcast these views. Yeah. Is that something that should be considered in mitigation?
Yes, I think it is, actually. Undoubtedly, we all say things in messages that we wouldn't want airing publicly.
And sometimes on WhatsApp, when you're in a group, you'll sometimes be deliberately outrageous in order to make your friends laugh or to get a reaction. This is the issue, like the humour people have on WhatsApp is sometimes different to what they would have publicly.
Absolutely. I have a 17-year-old son, Milton, and we exchange WhatsApp messages about politics and politicians and all sorts. And some of the things that get said on there you would not air publicly, you know, and is meant in jest, you know.
That's it.
So I think we should be sympathetic in that view.
How about you, Charlie? Is that a mitigating factor, the private nature of these messages?
Totally. I mean, and the fact that they are private, I mean, I think is significant. I mean, look, you know, Lucy Connolly said an awful thing on Twitter, but she shouldn't have been banged up for it. It was on Twitter. It was a venting process for her as a local resident of Southport when there were horrific killings going on in Southport. So she's entitled to her view. She's entitled to vent. She's entitled to have that frustration. Whatever you think about Charlie Kirk, I would never glorify anybody's death, whether on the right or on the left, whatever their political views. This individual felt the need to sound off, and whatever he said, that was wrong, and that's why he should lose the role that he has, which is a role of responsibility, but it's in private. He should apologise and he just keep his head down and focus on whatever it is he's about to study.
Simon, you might have left the Labour Party, but you know the workings of that party incredibly well, and you devoted many years of your professional life to the Labour cause. Is Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, after Keir Starmer's job?
Undoubtedly. Andy Burnham is on manoeuvres. I can see this 10 million miles away. And you know, one of the mechanisms, because how can he come back? He has to be back into Parliament. I think, and talking about WhatsApp messages, you'll recall Andrew Gwynn was a Labour MP. He was involved in private WhatsApp messages where he was talking in a derogatory way about constituents. He's subsequently been suspended. He hasn't been brought back into the Labour Party. If he stands down, he's very close to Andy Burnham. If he stands down, creates a by-election, Burnham could come back there in terms of...
And why is everyone talking about Burnham? Why is the buzz around Andy Burnham and not Bridget Phillipson or others?
He's very popular in the Labour Party, is Burnham. I have to say he's shifted. That's one of the things that turns me off Burnham's politics. He's gone from ultra Blairite to soft left. But that appeals to the makeup of the Labour Party membership at the moment. He's seen as having done a good job as Manchester Mayor. He has a lot of support. He plays it well. He's a good communicator. You've got to give him that. He's not my cup of tea, but he's very popular in the Labour Party, more so than any of the other possible contenders, Wes Street, in Bridget Phillipson, etc.
Well, why is he not your cup of tea? Give me some of that WhatsApp truth that is normally behind closed doors.
Yeah, well, I don't like people who just flip and flop, and that's what he did a lot of when he stood for leader in previous occasions. The other point to make is Lucy Powell, who's standing for deputy leader. She is very close to Burnham as well, and so that really is giving an indication of where the power is dividing up within the Parliamentary Labour Party, and she's proved to be quite popular within there.
Labour have a problem, don't they, Charlie? And they need to address this. Yes, they've got a healthy majority, but Keir Starmer's under pressure. If it was the Tories, he'd probably, he'd have bitten the dust by now. Labour tend to stick with their leaders for a bit longer, don't they?
They do, and I think they need to. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily take a leaf out of the Tories book because they might have chopped and changed a bit too much, but they need to learn the lessons of history, because there are only a few sliding door moments, I think, in history. And, should David Miliband have challenged Gordon Brown for the leadership? That was a moment that could have happened. Certainly, Ed Miliband versus David Miliband, a sliding door moment where Ed obviously came out on top. I think that was the wrong choice for the Labour Party. Again, electing Jeremy Corbyn over Andy Burnham for the Labour Party, it's sort of now saying, hello, the dashboard is flashing red, but nobody seemed to go for it. Now is the time, if the Labour want to hold on to the massive majority that they've got, and are tanking in the polls, and it's clear as day that they've got a leader, a Prime Minister, that did well to detoxify the Labour Party, did well to maybe prosecute, in a sense, across the dispatch box as former Director of Public Prosecutions, Boris Johnson during COVID, got the Labour Party sort of elected, even though it was a bit of a loveless landslide. They now need a political figure. They need a politician, not a manager. And Andy Burnham has those qualities, and he's worked the North. He's advocated for more money for the North. He's talked about scrapping the two-child benefit cap. He has moved to that soft left. He is a Labour man that I think people are moving towards. And if they want a politician in number 10 to lead a political movement, which is a Labour political movement, I think it's a no-brainer.
Are we being too harsh on Sir Keir Starmer? Are we underestimating his instinct for self-preservation, his tenacious attitude to hanging on to power? First of all, achieving it was the big thing last year, and now the extent to which he will seek to remain Prime Minister. I mean, this is a guy that certainly exists to be in number 10, and he won't go out without a fight, will he?
He won't, but very briefly, I mean, he's very comfortable, and looks comfortable, to be fair, on the international stage. When he has the summits, when he's meeting President Zelensky, when he's sort of talking in NATO terms, when he's sort of around the UN table, he looks...
And charming Donald Trump, surprisingly.
And charming, he looks comfortable in that elitist sort of sense of world leaders, but he hasn't got a clue, it seems to me, about domestic politics. He hasn't got his finger on the pulse when it comes to immigration, calling everybody jumping on a far-right bandwagon because people are protesting was a huge gaffe. And I just think his management of his cabinet has clearly failed.
I think Starmer has failed upwards from early in his career, in actual fact. He became an MP relatively recently, relatively easily in London. He's parachuted into a position. He was parachuted into CPS. People who worked with him before he went to the CPS said he went into public service because he wasn't very good at generating fees as a barrister. So he went into public service. He didn't do a very good job at the CPS, failed to prosecute, I would argue, failed to prosecute Jimmy Savile, didn't do a good job around the grooming gangs, contrary to what he likes to give the impression of. He then becomes a Labour MP, and then, just because Corbyn is such a failure, he eventually manages to become Labour leader, because there's nobody else left in the room. And then, because of the failure of the Conservatives, he ends, as you call it, a loveless election, landslide, and he's in Downing Street. But he's certainly not up to the job, and he's been found wanting from day one. I think he's an utter failure, actually. I don't think many in Labour expected him to become Prime Minister so quickly. I think they thought there would be a gap, another period where the Tories remain in power, and then they'd pick another leader before that.
I mean, Simon's made a really good point there. How can it be that Sir Keir Starmer has got the Labour Party into government again to detoxify the pod, only to then allow Jeremy Corbyn to still get the airtime and have a new party, and where the membership is now drifting to the far left again. He hasn't managed the party well, he hasn't managed the country well at all, and that is the big problem for the Labour Party.
Can Keir Starmer turn the ship around? 0344 499 1000. Next up, Peter Mandelson exits the, of course, ambassadorial role that he's got as UK ambassador to the United States. So what next for that UK-US special relationship?
meaningful improvements in the NHS and in the waiting list data, they're getting real trouble. There's a little bit of a caveat here that these do go up and down. Winter's coming, waiting lists generally go up then. But again, as you said, he promised real significant progress on this, and whether or not it's a little blip, there still is nothing meaningful happened.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
So Tommy Robinson will be leading a march in central London today. We'll bring you ringside coverage of that as it plays out. Unfortunately, the authorities are expecting trouble, with the police having hired an extra 500 cops to police the event. But who is Tommy Robinson? Is he a fearless patriot speaking for millions of people, or a dangerous thug who seeks division? We'll have a very balanced conversation about Tommy Robinson and understand more about this influential figure in the next hour. But speaking of influential figures, I'm joined by Charlie Rowley, former Conservative Special Advisor, and former Labour MP Simon Danchuk. And Simon, you now support Reform UK.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a party member, yeah.
And you've been on a journey that many on the left have been on and will be on at the next election.
Yeah, well, I think I've stayed still in politics, really, quite broadly. I was always on the right in the Labour Party, tough on illegal immigration, tough on benefit cheats, strong on law and order. But whilst I've always had those views, the Labour Party has gone to this North London Labour walkery that I just don't align with at all. The party left me, and that started happening under Ed Miliband.
Most definitely. It's almost an anomaly of history, isn't it, Charlie, that we got a Labour government in 2024 of last year, because really the Western world is shifting right.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that for too long there's been the silent majority of people who have just gone about their day-to-day but have been frustrated by governments, the Tory government that didn't get a grip on things that they want to get a grip on, which is basically low taxes and getting a control of immigration and cutting crime. I think we are traditionally, as a society, just conservative.
Small c conservative.
Small c conservative. And that was lost under the last government. It's certainly not present under this one. And that's why I think there is this vacuum now. And that's why Reform that have emerged as the front runners and leading poll after poll, because they're articulating the views that many people care about.
Why do you think the Conservative Party did shift left over all those years?
I think it got lost through... I mean, look, the country in itself got put on the back burner because it was dealing with the internal divisions of Brexit, and then COVID came along, and I think there was the whole idea you need to protect people and we need to sort of, get ourselves out of, after years of austerity, rightly so, or efficiency savings, as I like to call efficiency rather than austerity. Then I think there was this need to, we need to change. So how do we change? Let's be more compassionate. There's nothing wrong with that, but the compassion wasn't necessarily focused in the right way. It was about sort of maybe taxing more and spending more and sort of trying to have more of a social policy side to a Conservative Party that hadn't been seen before. But I don't think, for example, Theresa May really got a chance to talk about the things that she wanted to talk about, which was the just about managings, the ordinary working people that actually make this country tick. It was all about Brexit, and it was all about Europe. And, I think when you take your eye off the ball, you allow papers to be put in front of ministers that will just sign off, which includes more spending here, more spending there, and all the rest of it. And so I think, it was a lack of oversight from ministers that made the Conservative Party sort of lose its way politically.
I think we've ended up with this political class, haven't we, with David Cameron and certainly with Theresa May, that are just are about political management. Theresa May was just a manager, just like Keir Starmer is. This is not what the public want. They want a politician, a political leader who's got a strong vision, who is forceful. Whatever you think of Blair and what he did, etc., he did have a vision. He was a very good communicator. Margaret Thatcher was the same. That's the sort of leadership that's expected in Britain, and it's not what we've been getting for a considerable amount of time. It's certainly not what we've got under Keir Starmer. Relating to the Conservatives, I mean, there are some Conservative MPs that are more like Liberal Democrats.
Yeah.
You know, and why would you vote for that? So no surprise that I've gone from Labour to Reform, because I want radical changes in this country.
Well, I agree. I mean, the Conservatives presided over the illiberal lockdowns, the price of which I believe we're paying to this day.
Yep.
And I just think I think Sweden would have been a very conservative response to COVID. Instead, we had an authoritarian leftist response under Keir Starmer. Net zero. You've also got Theresa May, who recently, in an interview, declared herself to be proudly woke, which I think tells you everything about the modern Tory party, Simon.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's been a disaster for the country. And then with this loveless landslide that Starmer comes in on, and it's even worse. I mean, you'll recall Starmer wanted to lock down even more than Boris Johnson did during the pandemic. He's exceptionally left-wing authoritarian. And I'm not sure how much longer Britain will put up with that in actual
Simon,
fact.
we obviously saw the extraordinary electoral success of Donald Trump in America, winning by every metric. You've got Italy, France, Austria, all shifting right. And yet in the UK, we did get a Labour government, but I think it's because the Tories were in, and it looks to me like a blip. But the left are in retreat across the West, aren't they?
Undoubtedly. And one of the significant reasons we got a Labour government is because lots of people stayed at home. And there were lots of people just didn't go out and vote. So if you look at the numbers, the Labour was elected on very small electorate. And that will change. There's no doubt about that. People have had enough. They won't re-elect another Labour government in a considerable amount of time. I think Reform will storm it, in actual fact. I think that's inevitable.
What's your prediction?
Oh, I think we'll end up with Nigel Farage. If he lasts that long, he's not getting any younger. He likes a pint and several cigarettes. But nevertheless, I think Reform will be in power. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
What do you think, Charlie?
I mean, they're all ifs and buts, aren't there? But, will, Kemi remain as leader of the Conservative Party? Would that shift the dial if there's a change there? Will Keir Starmer remain as leader of the country? If that changes, does that bring more people back to the Labour Party? Can Nigel last up until the election? All of those are ifs and buts, so it's impossible to say at the minute. But at the moment, if all things being equal, then I think it's very hard to see that people won't vote for Reform. They will come out in their droves, I think, because he's the best at the moment to articulate the issues of the country, to put it how he's got his finger on the pulse. And, people are fed up of the previous two parties, and people, even if you've never voted Nigel before, you were just sitting at home thinking, well, we may as well give him a go. Because Keir's, messed it all up, the Tories can't come back, let's just give Nigel a chance.
What might happen, there might be a deal between the if you have a change of leader, perhaps Robert Jenrick becomes leader, I could imagine a deal being done between Reform and the Conservatives. That might be a solution.
You heard it here first. Gents, brilliant to have your company. Simon Danchuk and Charlie Rowley, do join me again in the near future. Next up, what do we do about free speech in Britain? Don't go anywhere.
very good morning to you, by the way. Morning, Tory, with me, Mark Dolan.
Just some breaking news for you coming out of Liverpool Crown Court.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the programme. Welcome to the Home of Common Sense.
Loads to talk about, I promise you that. Loads and loads and loads.
Yes, it's me again, your genial host, Kevin O'Sullivan.
How realistic do you think a ceasefire is this week?
There's a very good chance that we'll have a settlement, an agreement of some kind.
We basically have two countries that are...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good morning. I'm Mark Dolan, and this is Talk, the home of common sense. We've got a packed hour to go, and the fallout from the murder of prominent conservative US activist Charlie Kirk continues. Meanwhile, here, pressure grows on the student and incoming president of the Oxford Union, supposedly a platform for free speech and open debate, who delighted in and celebrated the news of the shooting. This is a man who debated Charlie Kirk face to face. So should this young man be entitled to his free speech, however abhorrent, or should he lose his post as president of the Oxford Union? And is Liz Truss right that he should be expelled altogether from Oxford University? Well, it's been a torrid 14 months in power for Sir Keir Starmer, and the Sharks are circling with his arch-rival, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, reportedly plotting a leadership bid. With the ignominious departure of several government figures, including, of course, Angela Rayner, and now the UK ambassador to the US, Peter Mandelson, with an economy flatlining, illegal immigration through the roof, and a very unhappy set of backbenchers, can Keir Starmer cling on to power, and if so, how long has he got? And the economy has now officially ground to a halt, with growth at 0% in July. Folks, this is not a drill. We are in recession territory. Not great news for Rachel from Accounts and her £50 million black hole. So is the Chancellor about to think the unthinkable and break a manifesto pledge to raise income tax, VAT or national insurance? And today sees several marches in the capital, the most prominent of which will be led by the political activist Tommy Robinson. So who is Tommy Robinson? Is he a fearless patriot, giving a voice to millions of dangerous thugs? Or is he the man sowing division? We'll hear from both sides on that one. A very busy hour to come. I'll put my teeth in. It is the morning, and it's lovely to have your company. Book your place on the show, 0344 499 1000. Send me a text and let's talk. So, for reaction to the big political stories of the day, I'm delighted to welcome the political editor of The Sun on Sunday, Kate Ferguson. Top of the morning, Kate.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, it's a real thrill to have you in the studio and so much to talk about. You've got a lot in your inbox. First of all, Keir Starmer, is he feeling the heat, do you think? I mean, he's got a massive majority, but his personal authority within the party looks to be shredded.
Yeah, I mean, we said it once, we'll say it a million times. He's had a torrid 2 weeks. You talked about a terrible time in office. Actually, ever since they came in, it's been awful for Keir Starmer, losing Angela Rayner as his deputy amid that tax scandal, and then hot on the heels of that, having to bullet his own US ambassador, Peter Mandelson, because of those Epstein emails. Now, I've been speaking to lots of Labour MPs and figures within government, as you can imagine, and the atmosphere is just awful. The PLP, that's the Parliamentary Labour Party, those Labour MPs who, you know, should owe their allegiance to Keir Starmer, you'd think. He just delivered this big landslide just over a year ago, but they are out for blood. They're furious with the PM and the Number 10 operation. They think it's mishandled, these scandals. They think they're not listened to. They're angry about the reshuffle, which they think have forced some people out of ministerial jobs who should have been kept. And they basically want more heads to roll in Number 10.
Yes, I mean, as you know, history would tell us that the Labour Party generally more loyal to their leaders than the Tories. But is there a mood of regicide about the Labour Party at the moment?
I mean, whisper it, but people are starting to talk about, is Keir up to the job? I mean, we're not there yet that he would face a kind of direct challenge from his MPs, I don't think. But look at next May. Those are going to be really hard local elections. Scotland, Wales also up. I think you could see that clamour next year if he doesn't improve things. There's a difference between the Tories and the Labour Party here. So your listeners will be very used to talk of Tory plots and Tory leaders being dispatched by their angry backbenchers. Much harder for Labour to do it because they don't have the same mechanism. They can't send these letters of no confidence in and then get a leader out. But they can make a lot of noise and make life pretty impossible for Number 10 and Keir Starmer unless he changes things.
Well, definitely, and we've seen that at a policy level, haven't we, with his inability to have spending cuts, particularly in relation to disability benefits, demonstrating that even with that majority, he's actually finding it quite difficult to govern. What about other figures who might have their eye on the throne, the likes of Andy Burnham? Why is he such a potential threat to the Prime Minister, do you think?
Andy Burnham, I mean, King of the North, as he's known. What a good nickname. Anything that involves the word king in is such a good nickname.
It is.
He's been like a thorn in the side of this Labour leader for years now. You remember Andy Burnham was this kind of careerist, Blairite, blue-suited Labour boy who lived in London and was a cabinet minister under the last lot. Well, off he went to gain these kind of northern credentials as the Manchester mayor, and he's become a sort of spokesman for the discontent of the regions. So he likes to dub himself as Mr. Northern now. But there's a lot of anger in the parliamentary party that Keir doesn't listen to other wings of the party, maybe not enough northerners in his front bench, and also this thing which people call the soft left. It basically means you're not kind of out and out Blairite. He's seen to not listen to those wings of the party, and so where he's lacked, Andy Burnham sort of stampeded into that gap to kind of bolster his own backing and following in the party.
Indeed, and he's the mayor of Greater Manchester, which of course contains some of those red wall constituencies. So you could argue that he's not in the sort of North London Islington bubble, and he meets these voters and he gets their concerns.
He would like to say that, yes, and one could say that, couldn't they? I mean, Manchester's not exactly the kind of Manchester's Britain's England's second city. I mean, it's a pretty cosmopolitan, pretty rich place. But nonetheless, you're right, politically, Andy Burnham's trying to make a great virtue of not being in London. But, can he challenge Keir Starmer without having a seat in Parliament? That's the big question. Or is he just going to be kind of a thorn in his side, lobbing grenades at the sideline in various interviews?
And why is the vacating of the ambassadorship on the part of Peter Mandelson such a problem for Keir Starmer politically?
Right, so Peter Mandelson was his pick for ambassador, him and his advisors. It's unusual because it's a political appointment. Usually in the UK, you get kind of these suited career civil servants get those jobs. So it's going against the grain anyway. Also, Peter Mandelson, while before he was installed in the role, was seen as a bit controversial pick, he's forged a close relationship with the Trump administration. And so losing him on the eve of this state visit is not ideal. And also the other thing, look, you've lost him because of those emails with Jeffrey Epstein. The whole Jeffrey Epstein scandal is a huge political hot potato in America, as your listeners will know. And I think that Keir Starmer just didn't want to go anywhere near that, ideally, on the eve of this visit.
Why did Starmer push for Mandelson to get that job in the first place?
Well, I think they thought it was like quite a coup, what a clever appointment. Peter Mandelson, no doubt about it, is quite a gifted politician.
Sure.
There's a reason.
One of the architects of New Labour, really.
Architect of New Labour, went in the 1980s under Kinnock, got the Labour Party away from the hard left. He's the one that brought the red rose to the Labour Party famously. But his other great strength, as well as being a really brilliant political tactician, is trade. He was he's been a trade envoy. He did trade at the EU. It's really seen as his strength. And what he and his allies would say is, look what I did. I managed to get a trade deal over the line with the US in the small amount of time I was there.
I agree. I mean, that's the funny thing, notwithstanding the scandal that has always dogged this man for the entirety of his political career.
Yeah.
He has been, in terms of delivering results, he's been a very effective ambassador. He is the Trump whisperer.
Yeah.
And he's definitely paved the way for Starmer to have a good relationship with the US president, given the fact that the two men are not ideologically aligned, is quite an achievement.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that Mandelson was part of that. And as you mentioned, that trade deal, which sees us trading on favourable terms with the United States compared to the EU, for example. I think we pay 10% tariffs on goods going into America and the EU 15%. So oddly enough, his record as ambassador is a decent one.
Totally. And I mean, only a few months ago, everyone was lauding him as, look at this coup, they've managed to get this trade deal. Do you remember that love-in between Donald Trump in the White House with Peter Mandelson
I think,
at his
didn't Donald
side?
Trump call him a very handsome guy?
Very handsome guy. So, look, but the point of Peter is each time he's kind of this Icarus character. Does he fly too close to the sun? And it's his links with these old kind of super rich from yesteryear that have brought him down again.
Yeah, he loves billionaires, doesn't he?
Yes,
He's got a soft spot.
I can see why one might have a soft spot
We've
for billionaire.
We've all got our weakness.
I mean, I don't know any, but should I meet one, I'm sure I would also maybe have a soft spot.
He loves a rich man. It's pretty wild. Speaking of rich, by the way, the economy's not very rich, is it? We had zero growth in July. Far be it from me to talk the country down, which I think Labour, that was their big mistake when they won office, is to go on about the £20 billion black hole, because I think they didn't get the memo that, well, you're the government now, so it's in your best interest for there to be a mood of economic optimism. Instead, they taught the economy down. We flirted with the recession, 0% growth in July. Rachel Reeves is running out of road here, isn't she? She's pulled about just every lever she can to get more money in. There is the manifesto promise of no increase in income tax, VAT and national insurance. Could that manifesto promise be broken?
Rachel Reeves trying to sort out her budget. Budget day, I think, is November 26th.
As late as possible, isn't it?
As late as possible. So she's desperate to see the economy kind of start to improve, slightly turn around to see if she can get more of that all-important tax revenue in. The big question for Rachel is, currently, her approach has been, how many little pots of money can I raise? How many little taxes can I put up that will just about raise me enough money that I don't have to break that triple election manifesto pledge? However, it's becoming harder and harder for her to stick to. You speak to figures in Labour and increasingly they think that they're going to have to break that income tax, VAT, NICS pledge. Rachel's not going to want to do it. She's repeatedly said that pledge stands. I don't think we're going to see her do it this budget, although we may see those income tax thresholds frozen, which is a kind of stealth income tax rise.
Yeah.
But increasingly the chatter is, does Keir Starmer end up with a different Chancellor next year? Do they say, new Chancellor, new approach, and draw a line under that election pledge? Look, that's going to go down badly with voters because there wasn't much in the manifesto apart from that tax pledge. However, it seems increasingly difficult for the government. We're getting this kind of essay crisis budget preparation, and that just is not something that will last long term.
That's right. I mean, I think that's why the October budget was such a tragedy, is because, again, going back to, the interests of this Labour government is, folks, you need growth. You are a left of centre party. You exist to spend money. And if you don't have growth, you won't be able to spend money because the international bond markets don't trust Britain anymore. So they needed that growth. They got 0% in July. And so I wonder whether the likelihood now of that promise being broken is high, but perhaps what you're saying is that the political scapegoat will be Reeves, that they break the promise and they put it on Reeves and then she's replaced next year. Yeah,
I mean, you could see that. It's so hard for Rachel to break that promise. She's repeatedly said it's ironclad, that's what she sticks by.
I mean, she might make that a matter of her own integrity. That could be a resignation matter on her part, couldn't it? She could say, look, I'm quitting because I refuse to put up taxes.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen chancellors do that before. I mean, we're obviously in the kind of hypothetical land now, but Rachel will not want to do that. That will be the last thing she wants to do. So if Keir Starmer and Downing Street feel like they have to do that, do they need to change Chancellor in order to have that change of direction?
How engaged are your readers at the Sun newspaper with the Charlie Kirk story?
Well, I think actually really very engaged. You've seen it. You know, the coverage of it has obviously been massive, and you've really seen this kind of outpouring of emotion and grief on social media on it. So yeah, I think, you know, it is true that he was probably not a household name in this country, although lots of people did know who he was. But I think in his death and his assassination, he's become a household name.
Yeah, most definitely. So what is the mood music for tomorrow's paper? You are the political editor of The Sun on Sunday. What's brilliant about The Sun on Sunday is that you're sometimes sitting on a lot of gold and you wait until Sunday to drop a few of those truth bombs, right? But I suppose the overall picture is a government in crisis and ongoing anger about illegal immigration. A brilliant piece by Matthew Goodwin in today's paper about the consequences of the Boris wave.
Yeah, so this is a big kind of feature in The Sun today. Matthew Goodwin, obviously a big interest of his has been immigration. And he's saying that this, you know, we call it the Boris wave. This is the millions of migrants that came over when Boris Johnson was Prime Minister. That quite a few of them are coming up to that indefinite leave to remain, ILR, leave to remain. So this is basically their right to stay in this country indefinitely. It's 5 years and then you get that right. Now that's going to be millions more people staying here. Matthew's warning that those people are often low-skilled, low-paid workers. And while, you know, Boris did let them into this country, he's questioning, can the country afford to have this many people stay indefinitely?
And the Conservative MP, Katie Lamb's been writing about that in the Telegraph today as well, pointing out some figures, including the fact that, yes, you know, the country is crying out for so-called low-skilled labour in nursing homes and elsewhere, except that the net cost to the taxpayer of somebody that's a low-skilled worker coming to the UK and living here, it's a net cost to the taxpayer of several £100,000. And in fact, if one of these people who obviously are trying to make a better life, that's no problem, but if they live till 90, the net cost is £1 million to the taxpayer. So this is a conversation we need to have, and even if it's an uncomfortable conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think for many years, kind of almost the consensus was population growth was a good thing, immigrants would come, they would work, it would grow the economy. Now we're starting to see the terms of that conversation change. Without getting too technical, it's rather than focusing just on GDP, it's GDP per capita, i.e. per person.
Yeah.
So over the lifetime of that, of an immigrant living here, do they take out more than they put in? It's this idea of what kind of jobs should people be having in this country in order to be allowed to live here permanently?
Well, I cannot wait for tomorrow's paper. Kate, great to see you in the studio. My thanks to the political editor of The Sun on Sunday, Kate Ferguson. Next up, Keir Starmer, how long's he got? Would you be inclined to support this Labour government if we had a different Prime Minister? That's next.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Dear Mark, says Michael, I'm in tears watching and listening to Erica Kirk. Of course, that's the widow of the political commentator Charlie Kirk. I'm in tears watching and listening to Erica talking about her husband. Absolutely right. This from Pete, who says, good morning. Andy Burnham is more left-wing than Keir Starmer, so he won't stop immigration. This will be the gift that just keeps on giving for reform. Does the change need to happen at the top? Would you be more confident in this Labour government if we had a different Prime Minister? Nigel is in the capital. Top of the morning, Nigel.
And a very good morning to you, Mark. I haven't seen you for a very long time, so I shall say welcome back.
Well, thank you, and I'm delighted to be welcomed by a legend of talk. Nigel, you've been resonating on these airwaves for many years now, speaking common sense. What do you think about Starmer and his future?
Well, it's very kind of you for my introduction. Well, I rang you about Starmer, about America. I sincerely hope that Starmer stays in post like a mouldy sausage roll, really, because, of course, he is the best advert for the Tory party. What could be better than a man of failure leading a party of failure that's great for the opposition? We don't want anyone new in post. We want him to stay there. They keep on ruining everything so he get kicked out of the next election.
I know what you mean. Him being there is an advert for a new government, isn't it?
It really, really is. And if I can talk about America very, very quickly,
yeah.
we live in the US as well as the United Kingdom, and there isn't such a thing as a special relation. As I was saying to your gentleman who took my telephone call, it's all about really war and music and films. What is there a special relationship? There really isn't one. America looks upon us as a bit of a irrelevance, I'm sorry to say.
Yeah.
And if you remember the statement by Barack Obama, he's going to put us to the back of the queue years ago. I mean, that sort of really rubber stamps it for me. I think Americans have a much more greater fondness for Scotland and Ireland, where a lot of their ancestry is.
I tend to agree. Nigel, lovely to hear your voice again. We'll catch up soon. There you go, Nigel, who's got, let me tell you, fingers in pies, and he's got homes in the UK and the US, and he's got a great perspective on that one. It's very interesting, isn't it, how this story has exploded in regards to Charlie Kirk. And I think the really interesting question is how important this story is in the UK. And I think it is because I think there are echoes of the intolerance that we've seen in the United States playing out here in the UK as well. You get cancelled in Britain for the most basic opinions, such as there are two sexes, that our history is something to celebrate, that borders are there for a reason. And apparently any criticism that can be levelled against the woke agenda makes you a bad person. Doesn't make sense to me. Let's have a listen to a voice note from Nick on reform and where they fit into this whole political equation.
Morning, Mark. It's Nick from Loughborough. The right now holds all the moral high ground after this week's awful, appalling event in America.
Yeah.
And it mustn't squander it. So what it needs now is to take the heat out of the situation, and talk of revenge on the lunatic that pulled the trigger is not going to help. It's only going to inflame the situation, and America is probably a tinderbox at the moment. So whilst the right does hold the moral high ground, it needs to use it wisely. Have a good day.
I completely agree with you there, Nick. And what we can't have is you can't squander the electoral goodwill that may come with a landslide victory at the next election for a right-leaning party, because we saw what happened when Boris Johnson did that in 2019. What about this row at Oxford University? Should the incoming president of the Oxford Union, which is there to debate issues, should he step down as the president, given the fact that he celebrated the murder of Charlie Kirk? And is Liz Truss right that he should be expelled from Oxford University? Pav is in Harrow in North London. Hello, Pav.
Hello.
Pav, welcome to Talk. Good to have you on the show. What would, if you were, responsible for this student at Oxford University, would you expel him?
No.
Absolutely not. And I think people who are calling for him to be expelled fall into a couple of categories. Either they're people who don't understand the system at Oxford. I've spent basically on and off 11 years there. Or they're people who are trying to make political capital out of this. Let's put this into perspective, Mark, and I'm glad you've talked about double standards and everything else. The bottom line is that basically what's happened here, it's a very insensitive thing to say, irrespective of whatever side of the divide you're on. I find it unpalatable when anybody celebrates anybody's death, and I include, by the way, even when we're at war. At the end of the day, those people are human beings. Yeah. Celebrating death, to me, frankly, is beyond the pale. However, we need to turn around and make sure that we're clear that however insensitive this Schadenfreude was, which is what he indulged in, that's part and parcel, unfortunately, of freedom of expression. We don't have to like people's content. We can challenge it, but we shouldn't be looking to take the platform away. That's the problem that you have here. And I've listened to a lot of his videos. I've actually been there when he's been talking. By the way, he's a first-year student. He's going into second year.
Oh, you've actually witnessed him speak live, have you?
Oh, yeah, I have. Like I said, I've spent on-off in admissions and studying. I've spent 11 years at Oxford, so I'm pretty well versed in the system.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is the problem that I have, Mark, is that the whole point of the union, which is the debating union for those who don't know, as opposed to the student union, is it's there to offer all types of different behaviours, different perspectives, some of which we don't agree with, but we can challenge.
Yes.
However, and it's a big however, at the end of the day, this is something he will personally have to own. I think it's impossible that he'll ever be able to get away from it. But the bottom line is he was elected by just under a majority of just over 200 people. Just under 200 people. He's fully entitled to have these opinions. It's not criminal. We're very clear on that. And I'm not really sure what hounding a kid, and he is a kid, he's barely 20. I'm not really sure what that says, because I was always brought up to believe, and this is one of the things we do at Oxford, you challenge other people. Most famously, what happened when Nick Griffin came on Question Time, as opposed to the people asking him to be deplatformed? He was exposed in minutes, and he's never recovered. That's the way to do it. That's the way we do it. And ironically, if it's the name of Charlie Kirk who did that, who used to go up and down America and challenge people, aren't we sort of, and I'm not saying we, because obviously he was American, aren't we sort of turning around and negating the very thing that he did? The epitome of what we do here is debate, divergence, dissension. And I always say to people, as a teetotaler, you should at the end of the night be able to walk away, probably have a drink and say, we fully disagree, however, this is the way it is. This cancellation thing, ironically, that people are now calling for is the very thing that we've been calling out for those on the left. It's the antithesis of freedom of expression. And I frankly don't understand why people are trying to embrace it, because if they go for one person one day, you can bet your bottom dollar when they come for you, you're going to be less than impressed.
Well, the right are definitely guilty of double standards, I think, by seeking this man's expulsion. What about his incoming presidency of the Oxford Union?
Well, a lot has been made about it, Mark, but he sits there as part of a committee. I mean, it's very rare that he's going to be able to take any arbitrary decisions. But again, it's part and parcel of it. You know, some of the previous speakers, I won't necessarily mention names, people can look them up. They haven't exactly been, shall we say, beyond the pale in some of the remarks they've made. But that's the whole point. You may have that, and people voted for him. No views, but anybody who's listened to him for a long time. But it's not just him. He's a microcosm in that regard. Plenty of people feel that way. You know, we can talk about Palestine, we can talk about other issues. The point about it is people are trying to get him, in my opinion anyway, on the basis of what he said. And I just think that goes against everything, because it's a debating union. You have a whole plethora of views there. We've had people there last year, for example, who were talking about genocide in terms of Israel, which many of us would disagree with. But they have the platform. And that's the point. He's not going to be able to do anything himself. Now,
so would you keep him in post as president, Pav?
I would turn around and keep him in post and let him own it, because if people challenge him on that, absolutely.
I do think there is one concern definitely that I've got, which is that these remarks were made in private messages, and that's something of a concern, that you can be cancelled for remarks made in a message on WhatsApp to somebody else.
But then that's the world we live in. And again, Oxford probably will know this, and I'll finish on this note, Mark, is that Oxford itself has had cases where those types of things have led to criminal things, which fortunately are now concluded. And, you know, context is key, and I agree with you. You know, we don't know what context they were made. I'm not saying to you that necessarily would, but for example, let's say he was mocking it. I don't think he was, by the way. We don't know that context. That's the problem. We just jump to conclusions because we live in a world where, unfortunately, social media seems to dominate based on emotion. And often that lacks nuance and that lacks context. And I just always say, not in my name.
Pav, powerful call. Thank you so much, Pav in Harrow there. Your reaction 0344 499 1000. Next up, who is Tommy Robinson? And let's talk about this march today. Why are people so angry? Don't go anywhere.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
OK, lots to pack in before 10 a.m. We're going to remember a wonderful year in the past with the brilliant Virgin Radio host Steve Denyer in just a few minutes' time. We're going to go down memory lane before 10 a.m. And maybe a time that was a little bit more jolly than what we're currently going through. Now, thousands of people are expected to descend on central London today for rival demonstrations. Tommy Robinson's Unite the Kingdom March will move from Stamford Street to Whitehall, featuring speeches from Jordan Peterson and Katie Hopkins, with the assassination of Charlie Kirk in the US certain to be discussed prominently. Meanwhile, a counter-march, the Stand Up to Racism's March Against Fascism, will also take place very close by. So I fear that trouble will happen. But why are people taking to the streets? Why are they so angry? And let's have a look at Tommy Robinson in particular. What do we know about this guy? What is his nature? What is his motivation? Who is Tommy Robinson? Is he a fearless patriot, giving a voice to millions of people, or a dangerous thug that seeks only division? Let's get the views of one of my favourite writers and broadcasters, Charlie Bentley Astor. Hello, Charlie.
Hello, that was very kind.
Well, listen, you're a brilliant writer and you've written on a range of important cultural subjects that affect the country, including the grooming gangs scandal, in which you've been extremely courageous and very, very thorough and tenacious as well. What about this march today? First of all, why do you think people are going on this Unite the Kingdom march? Why are they so angry?
They're angry because their cultural identity, and in some cases their ethnic identity, if you're English, is being dismissed and undermined, most of all by the state. I think everyone can tolerate a bit of difference when they're out and about in society. That's just the nature of living in the multicultural nation that we now do. But when you have ministers, members of Parliament, you have even the police sort of saying, no, your identity is obtrusive, it's it's insulting or intimidating. And people who are like, well, I just miss the days of having a country fair and talking about St George and, you know, flying the Union flag and singing Rule Britannia. I don't know when that became a quote unquote fascist symbol. What are you talking about? I'm just here to demonstrate my pride in my history. And of course, Britain has like any country, a varied history, but we have lots to be proud of. And people rightly want to come out and celebrate who they are, as anyone from any other country does.
Is it possible to characterise today's march as the right cause that we can all get behind and the wrong figurehead of that cause in Tommy Robinson?
Well, it's difficult to say because Tommy Robinson isn't the devil that a lot of people construe him as. There was definitely a kind of association with him that over the years, maybe it's because he's cooled a bit, is certainly become unwarranted. There's always a very eclectic group of people at these marches. I've been to some. People there united by their country and using that banner of nationhood to undermine any other differences that we have. And so you'll see a very eclectic group of people there today. And Tommy Robinson is very pleased about that. He's always been very open about the fact that he wants this to be anyone can come. There is no barrier. Even if you're skeptical, come along, find out what we're about. But of course, Tommy does have a checkered past. He has had run-ins with the police. He's been very open about that he was a very hot-headed young man, grew up in Bradford, I believe, Luton, and saw lots of issues with the intense Muslim population there at the time. It's one of the first high-density Muslim populations that brought integration troubles and community tensions, and he's been very open about that and his experiences with that. And he is a very emotional person. Well, you know, it's very easy for people like you or I to sort of sit on high on TV and go, oh, well, of course, I agree with the movement, but I don't really agree with the approach. And that's certainly true in some instances of the things that he's done. But he's also gone out and done the thing which no one else has been willing to do, which is sort of stick their neck out to say, actually, these grooming gangs are a significant issue. Actually, I think we should rally together and have a public march demonstrating our love of nation. There's very few people out there who are actually doing anything more than tweeting online. And that's something that actually a lot of people admire and can get behind.
He's, as you mentioned, had run-ins with the law, multiple arrests and convictions, including fraud, contempt of court and public order offences. Why has he become such a national figure?
Partly it was notoriety to begin with, but I think people have watched, particularly in the last few years, his speech at the Oxford Union, his long-form interview with Jordan Peterson. They've sort of stuck their neck out and gone to one of these marches and gone, oh, actually, there's lots of different people here from lots of different backgrounds and lots of different faiths, different ages, and they've discovered, oh, okay, it's at least not as extreme as I was led to believe, and actually there's a lot of goodwill here. It's always a very celebration atmosphere. There's never any, these people are holding us down, these people are trying to take this away from us. It's always in a very positive, upbeat tone that this is the country we live in now, and yes, there are things we'd like to change, but actually we have a lot to be hopeful for, and there is much more that unites us than divides us.
Charlie, why have some on the right disowned Tommy Robinson, including Nigel Farage and Reform UK?
Because of his checkered past, and you know what, I understand that. And again, Tommy is a very emotional person. He's not so rational, though he's beginning to get better at that as he's gotten older. He was going to go to the Epping protests and take hundreds of people with him, as he tweeted, and I know a few of us sort of rallied around him and gone, you actually don't need to. That community is handling this fantastically on their own. And he listened to that and he agreed and stayed away. But he has said and done things that have broken the law. And I do believe in forgiveness and repentance. He's done his time. That means that he gets at least legally a clean slate. And I think that means that particularly where he's demonstrated contrition, and he's admitted to all his many faults. It doesn't mean that we can simply throw the baby out with the bathwater with this guy, because he's always acting from a place of emotional integrity, even if it doesn't translate well in practice. And again, I think he makes the argument, again, not in the kind of academic language that I or other commentators might do, but in that very heartfelt sense that connects to a lot of people who just go to work every day and sort of tune in to social media every now and then.
Some people characterise Tommy Robinson as something of a charlatan. Of course, his real name is Stephen Yaxley Lennon. How authentic is he? And here's the million-dollar question. Is he racist?
Well, he's explained why he goes under a different name. It was back when he was doing sort of more, illegal clandestine stuff. He wanted to keep his wife and kids out of it. Obviously, that was exposed, but now his pseudonym has become more famous than his actual name. It's very strange when you see a lot of people online going, "Oh, Stephen Yaxley Lennon," as if it's kind of like a got you moment, when he's been very open about the fact that, like, no, my name's Stephen, but I go under Tommy Robinson because that's how I've become known as. And is he racist? I want people to go and find out that for themselves. I have my opinion, and the answer is no. But people should go along to these marches, see who's there, talk to them. You will be surprised. Actually listen to what he has to say. Listen to some of the podcasts he's been on. And indeed, listen to his older ones and compare his shift in opinion. There is a big difference between the sort of hot-headed 20-year-old, as we've seen with the Oxford Union. I don't imagine that this guy who said this about Charlie Kirk is going to be saying similar stuff in his 30s. But that's how my opinion changed. You know, I was sort of raised to believe, like, no, don't you dare bring his name up. He's this evil fascist, horrible guy. And I'm sure that probably was quite true at the time. But he's definitely got something of a character redemption arc going on that is interesting, whether or not you're going to agree or believe him at the end. I think in this spirit of free debate, having that openness, that willingness to simply be curious is a very valuable thing. And so I would encourage people to go along and find out for themselves.
And I would encourage my viewers and listeners to check out Charlie's Substack. Always a compelling read, always fearless. That's charliebentleyaster.substack.com, or you can find Charlie on X with a very, very powerful line regarding that Oxford University story. Charlie writing, "I'm not saying Oxford Union has to ditch him. I'm saying I'm personally going to think a lot less of the Oxford Union and Oxford students if they want to be led by a man who has a block of ice where his heart should be." For that kind of writing, head over to Charlie's Substack. Highly recommended. Charlie, thank you for your time. We'll catch up soon. Andrew's in Hertfordshire. What do we do with this student that celebrated the death of an opponent?
It's that whole paradox, isn't it? So we want freedom of speech, and when it happens, the sunlight's the best disinfectant.
Yeah.
So he actually will be exposed for what he is. And if you look at Diane Abbott and you look at people that have said nasty things about people, they go on a course and then all is forgiven. So it's this whole thing whereby you can say something, I disagree with Mr. Nolan, but I don't fall out with you because it's your opinion. But we've got to this position of hatred, and it comes from Clarence Thomas, the Supreme Court judge in America. When he was put under pressure by Biden and the left, that's brought into the public domain how you can hate people. And that's really where all this started. So I'm not a fan of Tommy Robinson, but surely if Diane Abbott can say something about Jewish people that was wrong and do an online course, why can't Tommy Robinson do the same? And, we really are fighting that at the moment.
Amen to that. Andrew, what a brilliant call. I agree with every syllable. Thank you for that. Have a great day and we'll catch up soon. Folks, a bit of housekeeping. I'm delighted to say, bad news for engineer Dave, I'm going to be presenting the Weekend Breakfast Show for the whole of September, Saturday and Sunday, 6 till 10. So we'll look forward to having your company for the next few weeks. It's been a real delight, and I'm delighted to continue to do that, including tomorrow morning from 6. So do join me. Next up, we're going to go down a trip through memory lane for Retro Rewind, celebrating a year when things, frankly, were a lot better in this country than they are now.
Peter Mandelson was His Majesty's ambassador, His Majesty's envoy. Trump was thinking of it more as the royals rather than a kind of political appointment and kind of Westminster politics. So I think he's pretty unhappy at how domestic political opinion and Labour Party internal pressures have forced the removal of someone he quite liked. So I think that that's put a downer on it. And of course, every time we've had one of these visits, Alex, we think the whole question is, will the kind of Trump-Starmer relationship blow up? We've had a couple now. I think it's taken the sting out of it. But right now, it seems that there could potentially be some flare-up.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Listen, only the good and the greats populate this studio at Talk, and my superstar guest every Saturday for this little slot is Steve Denyer, who is basically, you look at the morning output on Virgin Radio, Chris Evans, but really you've got Steve Denyer, early breakfast. You are Chris Evans's fluffer.
The warm-up man. Well, I'll go with
more
fluffer.
Than that. More than that. Right. I think it's a step above. And Virgin Radio Early Breakfast, great to see you.
Lovely to see you.
For the retro rewind with a great year of the past. What year have you got for us this week?
We're going to go back to 1998. OK, and you said a moment ago that things were pretty calm. They were here. Tony Blair was our Prime Minister. You know, obviously he was elected in kind of 97, so things were still quite popular for him. Yeah. However, in the States, we had a small problem with Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky. And the year started with Bill Clinton saying this about Monica Lewinsky.
I want you to listen to me. I'm going to say this again. I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. I never told anybody to lie, not a single time, never.
Yikes.
And about 5 months later saying, yes, indeed, I did have sexual affairs. This was the massive talking point. I remember going to the States in 1998, and everybody was talking about this. It was, you know, is he lying? Is he telling the truth? Are they trying to get him, you know, are they trying to get him down? We had the blue dress, didn't we? The scandals with the phone calls. There's a great Ryan Murphy impeachment series about the whole scandal that was on the iPlayer. Everyone should watch it because it's really, really good. But you remember that?
I remember it vividly, and that dress was famously stained, and we won't go into too much detail about the nature of that stain. But it wasn't red wine, and I think that dress is in a museum somewhere now.
It is, and it still hasn't been dry cleaned all these years later. We had in this country Prince Andrew. Now, he was a helicopter pilot for the Navy, and he just stepped down, so he was kind of reintroduced into the royal family, doing various, you know, walk-around tours in this year. This is years before we now know what would happen.
That was back in the day. He was quite a popular figure in those days,
he was.
Tabloid fodder,
exactly.
Randy Andy.
I think it was slightly before that. He was known as the really good-looking prince. Yeah. And also he's always been known as, you know, the Queen's favourite. So back in 1998, you had the controversy with Charles and Camilla, because you're a year out of Diana passing away, but also you have William and Harry, and you know the fallout. They've lost their mum. How are they going to cope and what have you? But the Andrew thing was yet to happen, so it's interestingly calm in this year. If we're going to talk about tech, it was the year that Steve Jobs saved Apple. This is hard to believe with the iPhone 17 announcement over the last few days. Back in 1998, Apple was going to fold.
Yeah.
It wasn't making any money. No one was buying the products, and they came up with this, the first iMac. It was called, I made a note of this, it was called the iMac G3, which looks a bit like a goldfish bowl. It had the big kind of back. It looked quite cool. There no floppy disk. I loved the floppy disk in the 90s.
Oh, I love I'm very attached to my floppy disk. This thing, and it had a sort of handle on the top, and you could carry it around as a portable computer.
It looked very cool, didn't it?
Very
compared
futuristic.
To the BBC computer and all the others, so you actually had to sit by a plug, didn't you? But this was the beginning of everything. Jobs saved Apple. Years later, of course, the iPod was released, and you know, the rest is history. It's one of the biggest
Well,
companies
I
in the
remember
world.
when he launched, one particular product, and he said, I've got 3 products to announce today, which is a music player, like an MP3 music player, a telecommunications device, and an internet device. Except it's not 3 products, it's 1.
Yes.
And we're calling it iPhone.
Yeah.
And that was it. And this guy could sell sand to the Arabs. The world would look like a very different place if Steve Jobs hadn't inhabited it.
Very much so. Very much so. He invented those high-octane press conferences, which, you know, I was guilty of watching the latest one with Tim the other night, you know, in California, to find out the new products, what they're going to look like, to be the first person to, I put my name down for the iPhone Air, but it all started back in this year in 1998.
And you know what he banned? What he got rid of is he put paid to instruction manuals, because I think, you know, we're a similar vintage. I'm old enough to remember when you would buy a device and there would be an enormous booklet in 12 languages. There's no instruction manual when you buy an iPhone or an iPad.
No, I remember getting my first iPod thinking, I don't even know how this thing, how do you switch it on and how do you transfer songs onto it? And you just had to try and work it out. It was before YouTube, so it's amazing. Can we talk about Titanic?
Please.
Titanic came out in January.
My heart will go on.
Well, it's interesting.
According to my doctor.
Celine Dion hated that song, and she said no. It was actually offered to Belinda Carlisle randomly, who I saw last night, you know, to see in her show. She thought it was schmaltzy, it was cheesy. It went on to become Celine's biggest ever song. Titanic was the first movie ever to gross $1 billion. That's $1 billion. Kate Winslet nearly drowned. She got a coat caught when they were doing, you know, the water scenes in the ship.
She had a miserable time on that film altogether, didn't she?
I think so. I think
apparently
it was tough.
a nightmare, because a very hard taskmaster in the director James Cameron.
Yeah, I mean, he literally went to the wreck of Titanic 12 times before doing this. It was a labour of love. He wanted to get it right, but it ended up costing too much money. It took forever. But of course, the movie came out. I think everyone remembers the first time they saw that movie. It was like a love story, but also a disaster wrapped up in one. And it's great for Christmas Day.
It's a great movie. He actually insisted, apparently, that the cutlery that was on set in studio of the Titanic, it had to have the original inscriptions on every knife and every fork and every spoon, and all of the china and the bone china, everything. Everything had to be like attention to detail.
One of the best movies, I think, isn't it?
Yeah. What happens at the end then?
Well, I'm still annoyed about Jack on that door. How dare Kate Winslet? But anyway, yes.
It is a disgrace. Celine Dion, by the way, as a top radio disc jockey.
Yes.
Okay, on
I'm
Virgin
getting nervous.
Radio, early
Stop it.
breakfast.
Go on.
There are lots of artists who hate some of their most popular songs, aren't there? Apparently Elton John hates Crocodile Rock. Finds it an annoying song. Celine Dion hated it, but it happens a lot that the big stars hate their own music.
It's amazing, isn't it? If you look at a song like Aztec Camera, Somewhere in My Heart, they didn't even want that song on the album. They hated it. They said it's not us. Unfortunately, years later, it's the career-defining track. It's off on the way.
Yeah, the Phil Collins one. Peter Caldwell, have I got you down as a Phil Collins fan?
I'm a massive Phil Collins fan.
I think he's a genius. I think he's so underrated. Yeah. And it's Take a Look at Me Now.
Against All Odds.
Against All Odds.
He doesn't like it. I think it's his best song.
Right.
I just have 3 quick things to say about what Steve has been saying. First of all, a love story wrapped up in a disaster. Sounds a bit like my love life. Secondly, Celine Dion didn't like a song because it was schmaltzy and cheesy. Celine, let me introduce you to the rest of your back catalogue. And all I would say about the Titanic is, it was fine when it left Belfast. Built by Irishmen, sung by an Englishman, on an iceberg.
I can't disagree. And there'll be lots of slam dunks like that for the next 3 hours, because you're very good at winning arguments. What are you most concerned about today?
Most